Namaskar, good afternoon. Welcome to the Learning Exchange on responsible digital payments and the role of fintech in unlocking opportunities at the last mile. We welcome all the participants to this. We at the Better Than Cash Alliance are delighted to host this session with IntelliCap, NRMC, and under the esteemed leadership of the Ministry of Finance and state governments of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Odisha, and Tamil Nadu. Welcome, everyone. We have amongst us today senior representatives from both the central and state governments who will deliberate on the fintech opportunities to enable responsible digitization in sectors of national importance: land, agriculture, financial inclusion, to name a few. Digitization has become ever so important and has opened up newer opportunities during the current pandemic. The participants will deliberate on the opportunities. Before we move on to the agenda, some webinar logistics. Except for the speaker, everyone will be on mute to minimize disturbance. We have built in a question and answer session into the agenda, but do use the raise hand option on your screen if you wish to share a comment or ask a question. We will be sending the slides and the recording to all the participants via email. And we'll follow up separately with state governments on specific commitments that are made today. Moving to the agenda, we are delighted to have with us Mr. K. Rajaramanji, Additional Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs, Government of India. We thank him for his leadership because he has spearheaded this initiative to bring us all together for this learning agenda today. Most of us know that he's a key member of the Interministerial Steering Committee on Fintech that has been set up by the DEA. So we are delighted to have you to deliver the keynote address. We have 4 presentations from the center. The topics are Account Aggregator Ecosystem, Open APIs for Improved E-Governance, Smart City Cards, and Blockchain. This is interspersed with presentations and state initiatives by the governments of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Odisha, and Tamil Nadu. I now invite Ms. Masali, who leads the Asia Pacific work at the Better Than Cash Alliance, to get us started with her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanu. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to welcome you to the state government's peer exchange learning series on accelerating the role of fintechs in last mile service delivery. My name is Kesom, and I am head of the Asia Pacific region at the Better Than Cash Alliance, with the very good fortune to be based in India, the heart of fintech innovation. The Better Than Cash Alliance is a UN-based alliance with over 75 members from governments, companies, and international organizations who have all committed to responsibly digitizing payments to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. The Government of India joined the alliance in 2015 following the commitment from Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, and since then has been a global leader on this very important agenda. Indeed, just yesterday, the global leader Mr. Bill Gates called India's digital finance approach a global model. In the decades ahead, the Indian economy will go from participating in global trade and innovation flows to determining their shape and direction. And while some argue that the future is Asian, I think today's session will show that the future just might be Indian. And today's peer exchange, as we know, is led by the Department of Economic Affairs at the Ministry of Finance and many thought leaders from the government at the center and at the states. The key question that you have asked is, how do we unleash the network effect of fintech for responsible digitization and service delivery to millions of Indian citizens who are at the peripheries of digital India, whose lived realities is that they have limited access to mobile smartphones, internet connectivity, and have lower financial capability. And these are the next millions that Honorable Prime Minister and you want to serve, and to get there will require more collaboration and more lessons sharing among you, because the solution lies amongst yourselves. Fundamentally, the role of fintech in promoting an inclusive India is not so much, what startups invent, but how much you help them adapt and how much you incorporate in the daily lives of the millions of Indians at the peripheries of digital India. With this, I'm pleased to come to the learning objectives of today's peer exchange. Firstly, it is to highlight the successful strategies that we'll hear from various state governments, leveraging, of course, the tremendous national digital public infrastructure initiatives by the central government. Secondly, to identify successful implementation of fintech by state governments to solve for the challenges of digitization in key national priorities as set forth by the Fintech Interministerial Committee. Thirdly, to understand opportunities to incentivize responsible fintech partnerships at the last mile and value creation for the last mile users, many of whom are also women. And then fourthly, to generate commitments by the center, by state governments, to the responsible application of technology to create that network effect for digital services to which payments are integral for last mile ecosystem and empowerment. And as we hear today from Maharashtra, from Karnataka, from Odisha, from Tamil Nadu, we want to recognize that there is much to learn from every state that is a participant today. And today's exchange is part of that learning platform envisioned by, of course, Mr. Rajaramanji, that will help catalyze, launch, and scale the responsible agenda in fintech for last mile service delivery to citizens. And with this, may I now kindly request Mr. Rajaramanji, Additional Secretary, our leader, to make the keynote remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kesam. I think, first of all, congratulations to BTCA for organizing this this timely workshop. Credit should go to your team for picking up a topic which is very dear to the heart of the Government of India. I would, first of all, wish you all a very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a privilege for me to be part of this peer exchange co-organized by the Department of Economic Affairs and Better Than Cash Alliance on accelerating responsible role of fintech in unlocking last mile engagement and service delivery to our citizens across India, especially in rural areas and more so in the Northeast and 117 aspirational districts, which have limited access to mobile smartphones and internet connectivity and perhaps have lower financial capability. So there is a possibility for us to actually launch financial inclusion 2.0 managing. So in fact, the last 5 years, I would say is 1.0, where a lot of digital infrastructure was set up, a number of applications were released. But now I guess probably we still have the last mile problem which needs to be addressed. And I guess this workshop is about discussing, brainstorming and figuring out how to address these last mile challenges to ensure that we reach a universal coverage. And I would even say right to financial inclusion. And I think maybe that should be the concept that should drive us. So the Better Than Cash Alliance, from which Ms. Kizom and her team comes from, is our knowledge partner, and they have shared very critical inputs for our discussion today, and have suggested that we should unleash the network effect of various fintech solutions and create more opportunities. Obviously, it is both a combination of both the public sector and the private sector that can probably deliver good results. In fact, the public sector institutions like NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, the banks, and all of them have done wonderful work. But private sector is very good in packaging and delivering last mile solutions. I think so if these two are put together, I'm sure that we may have the solutions that we are after. So it gives immense pleasure for me to have several senior officials from different central and state ministries who are here to speak on various important aspects of fintech, use cases, case studies, and so on and so forth. I would particularly like to mention Mr. Sanjeev Kaushik, who is Additional Secretary in the Department of Financial Services, who is driving financial inclusion in the banking sector, and Mr. Abhishek Singh, CEO MyGov, who is contributing heavily to the growth of the fintech in the country, and is also speaking on this peer exchange. Anna Roy of Niti Aayog is also working on the blockchain strategy. National Informatics Center has set up a center of excellence in blockchain. So there are a number of government of India agencies. I mean, I also mentioned the National Payments Corporation of India, which has developed the flagship Universal Payment Interface, or the UPI, which is the basis for all the a number of payment solutions that have been that is in offer across the country. So the role played by state governments is no less. I mean, several state governments have announced fintech policies, have set up fintech hubs, and have also policies for blockchain, for artificial intelligence in an effort to harness technology for improving public governance. Fintech is obviously an important priority for the Government of India as it expedites the realization of Digital India vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. Now, I would like to talk to you about the digitization of payments because that is the core of our today's topic. So today, we all know that India is the fourth largest fintech market in the world with more than 2,100 fintech companies. Fintech has been classified as a sunrise sector by Niti Aayog, and fintech is expected to reach increase or grow at a CAGR of about 20% plus during 2017-21 and reach a turnover of something like $92 billion by 21. Fintechs provide an exciting interface of technology with financial services, offer a wonderful solution for improved accessibility and comfort and convenience of the ultimate customer. Government of India has invested heavily in the digital public infrastructure for service delivery towards financial inclusion, especially through the implementation of the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile trinity. We have about 41 crore Jan Dhan account holders, 1.2 billion Aadhaar card holders, and 1.15 billion mobile subscribers, out of which perhaps about 250 to 300 million may have mobile internet as well. So this great infrastructure, which I think no other country possesses, is probably the great opportunity that is with us, and we must really use it to its fullest extent to enable delivery of public services to the best possible extent. The account aggregator model on which Sanjeev Kaushik will speak about facilitates the transfer of users' financial data with their explicit consent, and it provides the consent architecture which can enable us to roll out far more useful and convenient last mile solutions. Now, let me talk further about the real-time payment systems like IMPS and UPI, which was introduced in 2016. India is expected to contribute about 2.2% to the digital payments market by 2023, and this is expected to reach about $12 trillion globally by 2025. So, if you look at the Aadhaar-seeded Jan Dhan accounts, which have enabled interoperability amongst various payment silos, for instance, the government to citizen payments like on LPG, on scholarships, on pension schemes, insurance products, etc., through digital solutions to promote cashless transactions. Now, coming to the significance of fintech solutions, I would like to refer to the success story of the direct benefit transfer of more than 68,000 crores, which happened during the COVID lockdown under the Prime Minister's Garib Kalyan Yojana, which was done effortlessly thanks to the great infrastructure which was laid down by the Jan Dhan Yojana account system. So, but however, the last mile issues. I think, in fact, I would congratulate BTCA and Keyswarm for their support in actually surveying what happened in the field during that period. In fact, they have produced a very good report which tells us that when all went well, except for that last mile part, I think where probably there is need for digitization. I think maybe perhaps integration of the Jan Dhan account with, say, digital wallets, such as Beam, etc., would probably enable the citizens to access the cash that they have received directly in their homes itself, instead of going to an ATM or to a bank branch. So I guess perhaps wherever, so these are potential improvements that can be thought of as part of the financial inclusion 2.0 that we can probably work on. Internet connectivity and lack of smartphones is also an issue, and this probably has to be kept in mind. So while the Department of Telecom under the Universal Services Obligation Fund is trying to roll out internet access in all the aspirational districts through a number of programs, we expect that this lack of coverage of internet will also disappear over a period of time. And I'm sure that is the opportunity that awaits us in actually covering the a large part of the Northeast and the aspirational districts as well. Now, Fintech solutions can be potentially transformative by creating a network effect, which can help address several friction points for user engagement and convenience. It can also be game-changing partners for state governments in employing solutions with open standards and shared infrastructure. Now, let us look at the key stakeholders and institutions. In Government of India, we have an interministerial steering committee on fintech, which has been set up to look at possible use cases where fintech can be deployed with the maximum improvements to public welfare. So we are focused largely on the micro, small, and medium enterprises, agriculture, and a few other sectors, which include perhaps direct benefit transfers and several other schemes of the Government of India. So we are the other key stakeholders in the entire process in the steering committee on fintech include Niti Aayog, Department of Financial Services, the financial sector regulators including RBI and SEBI, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and the UIDEA. So I'm sure that the state governments also are part of this process, and we're very happy to provide support for state governments to enable them to roll out solutions using this national backbones and architecture and infrastructure that has been created. Now, I would like to say that the robust government ecosystem helps in promotion of the fintech ecosystem, and we believe that a cooperation between all these stakeholders, including RBI, TRAI, UIDA, Department of Telecommunications, digital payment infrastructure providers like NPCI, private companies including banks, and etc., can actually work together to actually make possible a lot of these goals that we believe are easily achievable. If you look at the framework for developing an inclusive digital ecosystem, I think there are a number of pieces of work which have been done in parts, perhaps. I think maybe the RBI has put out the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion. Then we have Niti Aayog, which as part of its India strategy for blockchain has put out an India chain suggestion. I think a lot of work has to go into actually to conceptualize and architect the same. Then we have the India stack, which is the UPI along with Aadhaar and other components. Then we have open APIs for e-governance, which the MeitY is working on. Then account aggregator platform, which is run by the RBI under the with support of DFS. Then we have the OCEN, which has been put out by iSpirit, which is actually another piece of infrastructure which can be used for business solutions. Then we have a number of other items, including artificial intelligence policies, data protection law, which is on the anvil, etc. So we believe that all these pieces should be actually to be pieced together into a whole, which can deliver far more results than probably what is available now. So I would like to say that I would like to end by saying that state governments are the key drivers for promoting adoption of fintech solutions, because they are the closest to the people. And I'm sure that they understand the problems of the people better, and I'm sure that they would be able to harness all this for providing solutions to local problems. So we believe that the government and state agencies can work together in harnessing technologies like blockchain for fintech. In fact, use cases like KYC verification, supply chain financing, simplification of remittance processes, trusted payment solutions. All these are use cases where blockchain can be effectively applied to fintech. So let us all look forward to their active usage and deployment across the country in some time from now. Now, states could also accelerate the digital payments by using the DPT framework set up by the Government of India effectively. So, in fact, recently a ranking of these states was done on the DBT by the Cabinet Secretariat. And we find that some areas are lacking, especially in the Northeast, states like West Bengal, etc. And I think so. I guess there is a case for actually to work actively in some of these pockets to enable effective rollout of this infrastructure to benefit the public in a lot more schemes. The DBT infrastructures beneficiaries also can be collected to the digital wallets, as I just mentioned in the start of my presentation, to prevent these last mile issues, which we saw during the COVID time, to enable them to actually use the direct benefit transfers effortlessly sitting in their homes. Now, so we could probably look at the center and the states actually incentivizing e-wallet usage by citizens wherever there is smart, wherever there's a mobile internet access to support this process. The possibility of digital payments and smart contracts with suppliers and public procurement could be the next area in which the center and states could work together through the government e-marketplace. So this could actually help businesses to get seamless payments in cases of, say, delivery of products and services to the government under the public procurement framework. I would also advise state governments to work with cooperative institutions, because in fact, the cooperative institutions are the ones which have been untouched by the fintech revolution. So I would be very happy if the state governments can work on a mission mode to actually bring in the primary agriculture cooperative societies, the urban cooperative banks, and other cooperative institutions to launch fintech solutions for self-help groups and farmer credit. So we'll be very happy to support this, and the Ministry of Agriculture would be very keen to work with you, especially when we look at the new institutions such as the farmer producer organizations which have been launched and in the process of being expanded in the days to come. So I hope this learning session will be very useful to you all, and I encourage you all to participate and share your experiences and share your case studies especially. So we would look forward to say the coordinating and supportive role that UNCDF and BTCA has been playing, and we look forward to the report of this peer learning exchange to enable us to actually look at designing the next phase of financial inclusion policies of the center and the states. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajaramanji, for those remarks and for really setting the tone of today's learning session. If we move on to the next slide, our next speaker is Mr. Sanjeev Kaushik, Additional Secretary at the Department of Financial Services, and he will be speaking about the next revolution that's already underway, that is already making strides in many of the states in terms of its application, led by Mr. Kaushik along with a number of partners. And the focus is really on moving from digital financial inclusion to digital financial empowerment. So with this, Mr. Kaushik, a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Kizom. I'd like to begin by thanking BTCA and particularly my senior colleague from DEA, Mr. Rajaraman, for giving me this opportunity. This is now that I think about it, I have quite a few of the stakeholders that we would like to engage with. There are the state governments, there are fintech players and others. So this is a valuable platform for us in talking about some of the work that we've been doing, quite a lot of which is at the pilot stage. And even though the title of my presentation is the Account Aggregator Ecosystem, I think I'd like to keep drawing upon the broader theme which Mr. Rajaraman has already referred to. He was talking about Jan Dhan 1.0 or financial inclusion 1.0 to financial inclusion 2.0, the second version. And Kizom, you were talking about moving from financial inclusion to financial empowerment. I think this is really gradually the track on which we are moving along. And therefore, the theme for today's discussion sets very nicely the tone for that discussion. In the very first slide, I'd like to express our pride at how much the country has achieved. If you really look at it, setting the groundwork for where we are today has taken us these last 6 years. But then since 2014, when the Honorable Prime Minister announced the Jan Dhan Yojana program, we've actually come a very long way. Whether it is the opening of more than 42 crore Jan Dhan accounts, which are the no-frills accounts, or it is the 2 micro insurance schemes, the Jeevan Jyoti Bima or the Jeevan Suraksha Bima Yojana, which have had huge number of enrollments, or even the Mudra loans. Mudra, we generally do not talk about Mudra loans when we talk about financial inclusion, but the income generation aspect is also a very, very important aspect of the whole financial inclusion program. And through the Mudra loan program, we have enrolled several crores worth of borrowers in 3 different categories. One of them is the Shishu Mudra program, which is up to 50,000 rupees. The next is from 50,000 on to 2 lakh rupees, and then beyond that to 10 lakh rupees. So there are these 3 categories which have contributed to giving people access to credit and allowing them to have income generating activities. So if you look at these couple of achievements that we've had since 2014, we have come a long way in the goal for financial inclusion for a large number of our population, to the extent that the World Bank Fintechs report, which was published in 2018, actually gave us the crowning glory. What it said was that between 2013 to 2018, India has doubled the coverage of adults having bank accounts. From 35%, we have moved to more than 70% in 2018. Now, I hope some of those numbers, because this is from the top, but these have recognized the long way that we have come since 2014 in our goal for financial inclusion. If you then come to 2015, when the Honorable Prime Minister announced the Digital India program, really the backbone and a lot of what Mr. Rajaraman was talking in his remarks about was built, whether it is the NPCI-led UPI backbone for the country, or it is the subscription to the internet. We have more than 1.2 billion internet subscribers in the country. We have more than 600 million people with mobile phones, smartphones. Now, these are very powerful interfaces with which we can engage with the population, not just in providing basic access to financial services, but also to the next rung. And the next rung must surely include access to incentives for savings, access to credit, the whole bouquet of services in the financial services sector, which allows people to have a better quality of life. We know that the Jandhan Aadhaar mobile trinity has promoted digital payments. It has promoted the usage of the internet and of digital payments. But let me give you a few examples, very recent examples of how government has benefited by using some of these mechanisms during the COVID lockdown period. As you know very well, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan program was announced just at the beginning of the lockdown to bring essential succor to the people who are suffering during the crisis. And more than 20.5 crore women Jandhan account holders got the benefit of 1,500 rupees direct cash transfers directly into their accounts during the April to June period. This was through 3 installments of 500 rupees each. And more than 31,000 crores of funds, central funds, could actually straight away hit the women Jandhan account holders. And this money came very useful, very handy. There have been several studies which have shown us that a lot of this cash was withdrawn and was actually used by people who were suffering during the crisis to meet their essential needs. We also have examples of other direct benefit transfers which have been used using the whole digital interface and the JAM Trinity. For example, you know that the PM Kisan benefit is directly to Kisan accounts. Now, in the crisis, we front-loaded some of that transfer and we gave the Kisan account holders directly through the PFMS system the money under the PM Kisan scheme. Then we also have the ration cards through which the free food grain was provided, but now the ration cards are linked through Aadhaar, and therefore there is easy portability, and the center has now allowed for ration cards to be used anywhere in the country. These are some examples. We are also toying with, there is a committee set up under the chairmanship of, in fact, the cabinet secretary himself is looking at it, where we are discussing how fertilizer subsidies can be directly transferred to the accounts of the beneficiaries and how we can set up something like an e-wallet or a prepaid card solution. Mr. Rajaraman was referring to the need for an e-wallet system to allow the beneficiaries to have easy access to the funds without necessarily having to travel a long distance. We are precisely toying with piloting this for the fertilizer subsidy, wherein through the RuPay card and the Jandhan accounts, we could create some kind of an e-wallet system, but that is in the initial stages of development. So these are some powerful examples of how far we have come in our journey for financial inclusion and what we have achieved today and how this benefited us in the recent crisis as well. If I could move to the next slide, please. Now, talking about the need for account aggregators, if you see, I mean, this is really quite a no-brainer, and most of you do not need to be told how important account aggregators are for us. If you see the huge growth in digital payments, some of you would have been following the newspaper reports recently where you've seen that the UPI framework has crossed more than 1.2 billion transactions, and how the banks are having to invest greater amounts of money into increasing their bandwidth, into increasing their capacity to handle digital transactions. But some of the numbers are telling. Now, in 2018, 12 billion apps were downloaded on mobiles by Indians, which was the largest number of mobile apps downloaded anywhere in the world. if you look at the growth of UPI transactions, it is not just in terms of volumes of transactions, but also the value of transactions. And there is a study which is, I can't remember whether it was McKinsey or another organization, but the study shows that by increasing our focus on digital India, we could boost GDP, India's GDP by almost $1 trillion through 2025. So therefore, the need for providing a rather vast array of services, a bigger bouquet of products that customers can achieve is the need of the hour. As more and more Indians engage with e-commerce, whether it is individual account holders or SME businesses, you know that we have a vast array of data which gives us a digital footprint. And therefore, all this information need not reside in silos. It can all be aggregated and used for accessing data, which can then give, which will allow the providers to offer a whole variety of services and products to the ultimate users who are the customers. Can we go to the next slide, please? Slide basically captures the framework of how account aggregators play the pipeline role, whether it is the information which resides in silos with the different providers. You have the banks, you have mutual funds and insurance companies, and of course, last but not the least, you have a whole lot of businesses which are on the GST platform and which are filing their indirect tax returns on the GST network, on the GSTN. Now, all this information is available with the providers. And if we could find, if the financial information users who are listed on the right-hand side could get some of this aggregated information, they would then be in a position to provide multiple services and products. So, for example, you have flow-based credit. And towards the end of my remarks, I would talk about a pilot that we are doing exactly in this area. You could have a lot of savings products and other personal financial management related aspects. We've got Fintechs, which provide facilities for purchasing the gold-linked gold online through demat accounts. Or you could have deposits made online. Today, we are talking in terms of crowd sourcing platforms, which are getting together customers and pooling resources to offer to those who need the money. And then, of course, we have robo-advisors in terms of investments and insurance. So the whole framework basically captures the role that the aggregator plays as the connector, as the pipeline between these two blocks. Of course, the importance of consent, the customer's consent is extremely important. You cannot be doing all of this without the explicit consent of the account holder or the information owner, whose proprietary information is actually being shared by the providers with the users of that information. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, please. So here are some examples of what I was referring to. With the consent of the customers, we could build a track record of the receipts, the direct benefits or cash transfers that flow into their accounts, or the expenditure patterns. For example, I had a fintech provider come talk to me about how they could use customers' expenditure data at different petrol pumps to track his ability to service loans and therefore provide him with loan-based products simply by tracking his expenditure on fuel. So that's just one example how we could shift by building a track record and by having history of expenditures. We could build an asset from an asset-backed lending model. We could move to a cash flow based lending solution. Then, of course, there is investment advice. You know, people want to save, and especially when you look at people at the bottom of the pyramid who are not able to have regular savings because they do not have access to financial products that cater to that segment, we could tailor and offer to them regular savings products based on some of the aggregated information, whether it is through their salary slips, or it is through the account information on DBTs, or it is on their spending and saving patterns. Interestingly, a private agency recently contacted the Department of Financial Services trying to talk to us about a pilot that they ran for Bank of Baroda customers on women Jan Dhan account holders, and where women were incentivized to have greater savings by targetedly giving them financial products and credit products. And since the more productive users of that money in the household in the segment that we are talking about is typically women, therefore we thought we would have a more targeted approach to financial inclusion and improving the lot of these households in which women were the primary beneficiaries and the primary savers. Could we now move to the next slide, please? So here we are talking about how some of these innovative cash-based lending products could be designed. We have the entire ecosystem in which there are not just banks and NBFCs, but MFIs. Please don't forget, we have MFIs and other institutions like small finance banks or RRBs, which are also very important stakeholders in this whole ecosystem. Of course, there are the regulatory bodies which lend oversight over this whole mechanism, but we also have agencies like NPCI, which are providing the connect between the providers and the users of the information. And we have the state governments. Just last month, I got a call from the government of Karnataka saying that the state direct benefits transfers were reaching some of the wrongly seeded accounts. So when you do the Aadhaar and bank account linkages, the wrong Aadhaar numbers were linked to some of these accounts of those beneficiaries which were receiving some of the state DBTs. So therefore, they wanted a mechanism to be able to check so that the customer will be able to check using his Aadhaar number where the money is going and which is the correct account number. Now, obviously, there are security concerns and privacy concerns around this data, but we are trying to work on a pilot where using the masked last 4 or 5 digits, we could then set up a portal or a dashboard by which anyone could go onto that portal and check which was the bank account which has actually been linked to the particular Aadhaar number that he's interested in. So this pilot, if it is successful, would be rolled out across the country and would benefit not just Karnataka, but all the states across the country, both in central schemes as well as in state direct benefit schemes. And that could be a very useful thing to do. On this slide, of course, we've listed a number of benefits using the digital footprint of customers. You also see in the last bullet point over there, the cash flow management for SMEs. Now, apart from having access to credit, the whole aspect of cash flow management becomes very important because you also need to know how to deploy your cash, leaving aside the cash that you need for immediate business needs. Because you have to make provisions for different business requirements that come up in the course of business. So a complete 360 degrees view of the requirements and of the business finances. Some of these small businesses are not able to have dedicated finance officers, CFOs, and so therefore this service could be of immense use to some of them. Now, with that, I'd like to come to the last slide and actually talk about some of the new initiatives that we've been working on. Probably the first and foremost is Kashi. And this is something that the Niti Aayog has been championing with the support of Department of Financial Services and the banks involved. And the first pilot is being tried out in Varanasi district in Sevapuri block. Through this, we are using the account aggregators to track the DBTs, the cash transfers that customers are getting into their bank accounts, making that data available, and then the banks providers of credit would actually be able to have their appraisals based not on the asset-based lending, which is the norm so far, but based on the track record and based on the servicing capability of the customer based on his receipts in the future. And therefore, this cash over the internet, Kashi, loan product would be made available to the customers. This is something where we are trying to roll out over our, initially it will be through the Atal Innovation Mission in the Niti Aayog, But ultimately, the thought is to house this in a body like the 59-minute PSB loans, which is a separate company broadly held by different banks and other financial groups, so that it is a broad-based ownership. And then this would be rolled out after addressing the privacy and the information security aspects. The second initiative that we talk about in this slide is the eKYC Setu, and in his presentation, Mr. Rajaraman was referring to the need for a central or an online KYC. This is something that is going to be very important to the fintech providers, to the account aggregators, because instead of having to do individual KYCs repeatedly for every time that you need to discuss a product with a customer, if there is a bridge or a setu whereby a central KYC repository, we have the CERSAI, but if this setu, and supposing SBI has done someone's KYC, then that could be made available to the other banks and the other financial service providers, then that bridge would be extremely useful and would help solve some of the process issues there. So currently the Atal Innovation Mission, with help from DFS and the banks, is actually involved in designing this pilot. And this is something that is being monitored at the highest levels. In fact, the Honorable Prime Minister himself is reviewing these first two initiatives, Kashi and eKYC Setu. That is the level of importance that these programs are getting in government. The Prime Minister's Swanidhi program is something that is noteworthy. It was something which was organized as, which was announced as a part of the Atmanirbhar program for street vendors who had been suffering during the lockdown in the COVID period. This is a small amount of 10,000 rupees, which is to be digitally, completely end-to-end digital lending to street vendors. And currently we are in the process of implementing it along with MoHUA, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. But the whole idea is that right from the application stage to processing and then to sanction and disbursement, everything is on the online portal Udayami Mitra, which is run by SIDBI. And for disbursement, the documentation is the only stage at which the customer needs to come to the bank branch. Even that we are trying to obviate. And then the key component of this program is digital onboarding of customers. By digital onboarding, what we mean is we are encouraging the street vendors to download QR codes on their phones and then use payments on online payments with their end customers. And then there is a cashback scheme for incentivizing those digital payments which the vendors could accept, which will then incentivize them to use the online mechanism for payment. So there is a cashback scheme also built into the whole program. And finally, I don't want to spend much time on the infrastructure funds under the Agricultural Infrastructure Fund and the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund. These are part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, but these are the point here that I'm trying to make it is that these are loan programs which are completely intended to be digital loans backed by credit guarantees, right from the lending process on to invoking the credit guarantee and the reimbursement of any subvention amounts. Everything is through the online portal, and therefore there is a large scope for account aggregation in some of these loan products. And finally, we were talking about Jan Dhan 2.0. We are trying currently a pilot in the aspirational districts program. Mr. Rajaraman again referred to the 117 aspirational districts, which we are trying to saturate in different schemes. As far as the DFS is concerned, our mandate from Niti Aayog under the aspirational districts program is to saturate these districts on key financial inclusion parameters, that is opening of accounts, or on providing the social security, the two micro insurance schemes, or the Atal Pension Yojana. So in the second version of this program, what we are trying to offer is to link the credit, the bank accounts of customers with saving schemes. So for example, a customer's account being linked to a recurring deposit scheme in the bank or in different banks, wherein he could see which is the highest interest being offered, and he could do this entire thing on his mobile phone or on the internet portal. And therefore, ultimately, you could link it to different life goals. So, for example, someone might want to save for a daughter's wedding or for education of the child or for the pension, etc. So small amounts of 500 rupees per month could be saved through a regular savings program through the linked account. And this would really incentivize savings and therefore financial inclusion too. That is the next level, which is financial empowerment. You can see the recurring theme that is coming through in all of this as we move from financial inclusion to financial empowerment. Similarly, the gold link savings scheme, which I referred to briefly, is something where people all in India, we love to buy gold. But if we could allow fractional or small amounts of gold to be bought over the mobile platform or over the internet platform, linked to the bank accounts, small amounts, 500 rupees, 1000 rupees per month, could be used to buy gold, which would be kept by the provider, but can be done completely online. And that would be a way to save for gold and have gold available for the customers. And finally, of course, we've spoken about access to different credit and savings products. So that's about all I have, but you will appreciate that in this entire thought process, the role of account aggregators is going to be critical, because without the aggregated information simply residing in silos with different providers would not give us the same traction as we could get if we leverage all that information and then use it to offer a multiple array of products and services to customers. Thank you so much.
Sanjeev ji, thank you so much. That was very insightful, and you already have mentioned some of the collaboration that's happening with states like Karnataka and others, especially focusing on the aspirational districts. We will reserve the question and answers after Maharashtra's presentation. Just wanted to take note that we are slightly behind schedule, so we'll try to catch up with our time. But thank you again, Sanjeev ji. And I also want to let everyone know that, we have a number of states with us today, from Arunachal, Haryana, from Uttar Pradesh, from Punjab, as well as, of course, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and many others that I'm not mentioning. But this just to let you know that we are well represented from the states. So this is, just hearing these insightful pieces of information and next steps, and I should say national positioning of the last mile engagement is super helpful. Thank you, Sanjeev ji. With this, I have the pleasure of handing the mic over to Srinivas ji and Suniti ji from the Government of Maharashtra. Srinivas ji is the Principal Secretary, Department of Information Technology in Maharashtra, and the key architect of the fintech policy in the state, as well as a leader and champion of this very important ecosystem that's flourishing in Maharashtra, and much can be done in terms of lending Maharashtra support to the and lessons to the rest of India, as well as, of course, Ms. Suniti ji, who is the fintech officer with the Government of Maharashtra. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Kizom. And states are the cutting edge for all these applications. So I would like to start with certain things that we have done and certain policy issues followed by in the second part 2. So I'll just take for 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, then followed by Suniti's presentation. First is, Mr. Rajaraman had mentioned during the process, during his talk, I'll take off from where he left, about the farmers being to be involved in the entire process, especially the credit lines, to be a part of the fintech effort. So we have done one pilot, which was rather successful, I must say, whereby the farmers that they are storing their products, their production, including food grains, etc., in the various warehouses, they do get warehouse receipts, whereby they generate credit, because farmers' warehouse receipt is a negotiable instrument. But a lot of time lapses by the time they get the loan. So we have championed a blockchain platform. We have built a blockchain platform and used it as a case study, as a pilot, whereby you can analyze the entire production. The data will be auto-analyzed, and the loan to farmer is given in about 10 to 15 minutes, which otherwise taking 10 to 15 days. In fact, we could give one loan to one farmer in Amravati district. So it will be now applied all over the state. So we are in that effort. That is, how to apply fintech, how, because otherwise in remote places, fintech seems something esoteric, but it is not so. That's what I wanted to convey. Number one. Number two, what we have done is the DBT has been mentioned by Mr. Sanjeev and Mr. Rajaraman as well. So we have done two things. One is the farmers loan waiver project program that we have done this year and the previous year as well. But this year we have done about in 2 months we could disburse about nearly 20,000 crore rupees. And I'm happy to say that there are hardly any complaints, because we have gone through the Aadhaar route, that Aadhaar route, and the entire money has been transferred to their loan accounts. So all these things could be done in a matter of not more than 2 months. From conceptualization to implementation, we could do that. And part two of this same effort, the broader effort, is the DBT that has been mentioned. Through our DBT, we have in fact, we have disbursed scholarships around DBT state government platform, which we had built, about nearly about 10,000 crores. Hardly any complaints, 0.01% complaints. Because in DBT, we went through the PFMS route of Government of India. That was very helpful, because I'm mentioning this point specifically because we have been told, just there was a discussion where somebody has mentioned that, the bank account and Aadhaar linkage, this, that, and all that. So, but PFMS is a robust platform. Only issue I would be requesting Government of India through this, conference, through this meeting, is that should be the number of iterations can be reduced maybe. Otherwise, it's a very robust platform, PFMS. I would like to thank Government of India for enabling us to use it. And finally, before I go to policy issues, one more pilot I would like to say, which has been in fact now rolled out also in the entire state. Now we are bringing all the farmers onto the DBT platform. There are about 13 to 14 schemes we have identified. That includes some of those mentioned by the previous speaker. That is about the fertilizer subsidy. Even fertilizer subsidy of the state government, are the various input subsidy that are being given right now. They're being brought about through DBT platform. That work has started in the last couple of months. About 6 months. Now the platform is ready. About 300,000 to 400,000 farmers have already been onboarded, so that they will be given these benefits. So these are the very important things. And by having said that, I must also say fintech, as I look at it, is a blockchain 2.0, as I call it. So blockchain becomes very, very crucial in the implementation of fintech. And I am happy to say that we had used it extensively during the credit linkage for the farmers, which I had explained in the first example. Having said this, certain case studies which we have done rather successfully, and we will be happy to collaborate with Government of India on this and take their guidance as well. Now I'll come to the fintech policy. In fact, about 2 years back, we were the first state, maybe perhaps now, I don't know, other states have joined, to have a proper fintech policy, which will be enunciated right now to you, where we try to help the various startups. And secondly, while doing that, we also try to build a statewide fintech platform, fintech in the form of fintech sandbox, right? Blockchain sandbox, rather, not fintech sandbox, blockchain sandbox, which is ready and it is under process, and it has been completed also. The development has already been completed. So whereby various various things that are happening, that can be properly integrated. And one last point before I close, before Suniti takes over, is the very important point that has been mentioned by Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, is regarding the golden record. You should be able to come out with the proper golden records to be come out with while doing various beneficiary related schemes. So for that, we have doing a project within the overall framework of India enterprise architecture. We are doing this data interoperability project, which will be a big time, in making these fintech revolutions really possible, especially in the rural areas. So these are the things that I thought I'll mention to you. And over to Suniti. Thank you. And thanks for everybody. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for setting the stage and specifically mentioning around the key initiatives that have already been done in Maharashtra. So what I'll do is I have few slides which kind of focus specifically on the policy that Srinivas sir was mentioning about. So we'll spend probably 5 to 7 minutes on the policy, expanding that and just making it little clear to the larger audience here. But then I'll move more to the government connect with fintechs, which is of more importance here. So as Srinivas sir had mentioned, Maharashtra as a state is very forthcoming when it comes to multiple technology innovation initiatives since many years. So with all this adoption of multiple technology, with all these multiple data sets that are already out there, when the fintech policy came to life, then fintech policy had been laid out with a thought that while this is a sunrise sector, while the sector is booming up like anything, the state actually has in one hand the lot of data sets that the state is already sitting on. In the other hand, the state actually has a natural advantage of a large financial ecosystem which is there in Maharashtra. And specifically, if you look at Mumbai, it's actually home to all key financial institutes, the key regulators who are actually already out there in Mumbai, whether it is our RBI is there, SEBI is there, even the NPCI is there, and all large financial institutes that you can think of, whether it's ICICI, SBI, SDFC, or the stock exchanges. So these are just to name a few, that all these key stakeholders play a very important role when it comes to ecosystem. So as a state, what had been done through these policies is a very well-rounded approach that has been taken, so that we develop the ecosystem in one hand, and in the other hand we actually look at how government as an large entity can adopt multiple things from this fintech ecosystem through various collaborative opportunities that we can think of. So what we actually have done, if you can go to the next slide, Kizan. Right. So this actually just speaks about the 5 key pillars the policy has, which does have specific glance on access to capital, the global market access, the fintech ready talent pool, promoting open innovation, and catalyzing the ecosystem. These are 5 key pillars on the basis of we are actually looking at working with the ecosystem, bringing this ecosystem up. So just going one by one so that I can explain what it is, and then we'll go into details in some of these pillars. So this access to capital is something where we really look at supporting these fintech entrepreneurs with some benefit schemes. And also what we do is we actually have created a democratized platform where these fintech startups can actually get access to multiple investors who are there in the ecosystem. So through this, we're actually supporting the tech solution creators to survive, to grow, and ultimately solve larger problems for the ecosystem. The global market access is, again, we are very inclusive when it comes to the overall ecosystem. So we do look at how our fintech companies can expand and go abroad, and we're also we're very cognizant of how we can look at welcoming new global entities to enter into Indian market and also participate in this larger scheme of things where they can solve the various problems that Indian ecosystem has. Then coming to the other one, which is the fintech ready talent pool. So this is again a parallel element that has to be addressed, because the fintech sector, while it is growing, while it is setting up to solve so many problems, the sector in itself is facing a lot of challenges when it comes to awareness or the ready talent that is available. So that is where we actually have created a platform where multiple colleges can come on board, and they can actually leverage a lot of digital content that's been created, whether it is from payment, lending, cybersecurity, blockchain standpoint. and they can go through that content, and they can also be part of a hiring pool, which we already have, 30 plus industry partners from fintech ecosystem standpoint, and they can be absorbed in multiple fintechs in there. So that is an important initiative where we do also see that we can have a partnership with many other states. Then the next lever is open innovation, and this is the lever as a part of which, as Srinivas sir had mentioned, we do have a sandbox which is out there. And as a part of this API sandbox, we already have fintechs and financial institutes data APIs which are opened in there. And we are actually working tirelessly on how we can expose some of our government data sets in the API. So this is something where we already have 200 plus APIs hosted at this point in time. And we are actually looking at taking it to another 100 plus APIs from a government data set that will be actually adding in next 6 months. So this is also an area where we'll discuss further from a collaboration opportunity standpoint. Then the fifth one is catalyzing the ecosystem. And this is again a broad element. And this is where we actually look at working with the ecosystem, connecting them with various government use cases, creating accelerator programs, connect programs, so all these alongside various market connect initiatives, everything happens as a part of this ecosystem vertical. So in last 2 years, we actually, on the right hand side, you'll see there are few numbers that we have mentioned. We have been working with approximately 500 plus fintechs so far, 45 plus partners who have engaged with 35 plus international partner network. And in this whole process, the fintechs who are part of our network have almost raised 1100 plus crore of funding in last 1.5 years. So I'll just deep dive into some of the elements. If you can go to the next slide. Right. So these are some of the program overviews. We need not have to go detailed into all these things. But this first one that you see is the one that I was talking about from a proof of concept standpoint. And this, as a part of this GovTech pilot initiative from ecosystem standpoint, we actually act as a middle layer between various government departments and the fintech market, fintech ecosystem that is out there. And since last last 2 years, we have enabled almost 30 startup proof of concepts, and some of them have gone as sir was giving some examples, some of them have actually moved ahead and beyond the pilot stage, and a lot of these are now in a evaluation stage, and we do see a lot of positive outcomes. And in next 6 months plus time, probably our adoption rate will definitely be moving up when it comes to fintech solutions. So the few names that you see there are just a specific snapshot of some of the companies that we are working with in under various use cases. The other element, the other programs that you see there, whether it's a grant reimbursement scheme, is again a benefit scheme. They not have to go detail into that, but we almost 85 plus companies are getting benefited under that. Under API sandbox, as I mentioned earlier, there are 200 plus APIs that are out there, and there are many more APIs that we are actually working on, which does include citizen services API, the Shops and Establishment Act related data sets, DBT related data sets. All these are elements that you are looking at how we can expose these data sets, which the fintech ecosystem can really experiment with some of these data sets and create various solutions that is needed for last mile. If you can go to the next slide, please. Right. So this is what I really wanted to spend some more time on, because this is what actually signifies what Mumbai FinTech Hub is and what is that we are trying to do, how we are trying to do. So if you see here, Maha IT is mentioned, which is actually the Maharashtra IT Corporation Limited, and through Maha IT, we are actually operationalizing this FinTech policy. Mumbai FinTech Hub and Maha IT work hand in hand, and we work as a bridge between various departments and the ecosystem, as I mentioned earlier. So the way you see at the core of it, it's government of Maharashtra and multiple departments that are out there. And if you see whether it's a smart city or it is agri department or it's health department, education, revenue, or your livelihood mission, all these departments, all the names that you see here, actually they have so many use cases where there are the opportunity to lies with fintechs is enormously high, and the impact that will come out of this partnership is definitely very, very high. So, for example, let's pick up this livelihood mission, and you will see names like Rangde, Calidofin. So these are fintechs who are actually working on looking at how they can enable various small ticket saving products, even like very small credit for rural women, which can be given, and even for people who are very new to credit, who cannot be given a loan through the normal banking ecosystem. So these are entities, small entities. They have got their NBFC license. They have started working with some of the some of the states, but I mean. Unfortunately, they have not worked with any of the government entities yet. So the point that I'm trying to mention here is government is sitting on such a huge data set, and as Rajaraman sir and Sanjay sir has mentioned, there are so many things that we are doing, there's so many schemes, so many pilots that are happening. If we can expand all this, and expand the our reach, and expose this problem statement, and expose this ecosystem, these use cases to this larger fintech ecosystem, then there is a enough magic and miracle that can happen, because these are these younger entrepreneurs who are trying to solve something, but then they don't have the right outlook that a government department will have. So and it has been really interesting to see what can be done between these two. And recently, I'll just pick up an example with agri. And recently we had hosted the Pune Agri Commissioner and his whole office had spent around 3 hours on a day listening to 12 startup solutions, specifically focusing on various agricultural value chain elements, like starting from your input financing to various insurance elements to price prediction. So there are so many areas that the agri team had mentioned that these are areas that we would like to understand what these fintech entrepreneurs are doing, and they were really, really happy to see such interesting solutions which is there in the market. And that is where the opportunities of collaboration actually starts. We can understand that the tenure to engage with them, it could be longer, but there has to be a starting point somewhere. So that is where we actually see that there is a lot of collaboration that can happen. And I think the all these departments, if can be engaged with this ecosystem, there is a lot of solution that can come out. And again, on this, we are happy to extend this for further collaboration, because in any ways we are already curating the ecosystem. So we actually have a good database of multiple fintechs who are doing on various solving for various use cases. And it's not that these solutions are for Maharashtra only. So if we have found a specific solution, that solution actually can be used by either a Karnataka or Andhra or Himachal, anywhere, because ultimately the customer segment is across the board. So that's again another area that we can definitely collaborate on. So that actually brings me to this particular slide, where we have already discussed about some of these examples that sir has mentioned, and I also was mentioning during the other slides. So these are few areas where we actually have seen some good outcomes, whether it is from MSRTC, which is Maharashtra State Transport Corporation. They worked with a fintech called City Cash. City Cash alongside Fino Payment Bank. So it actually has gone live before COVID. There were around 400,000 citizens who have already come on board, and they do see that around 2 million users to come on board by 2021. Digital warehouse receipt finance, again another successful pilot that has come out. And as an which Srinivas sir was mentioning, and as an outcome of this pilot, recently the specific bank, Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank, actually committed a 2,000 crore of corpus fund for lending through warehouse receipt financing. Before this whole pilot had started, the bank was really skeptical about such kind of a instrument, but then now they are very confident that they will be able to use this. Similarly, SMART is the program that I was mentioning, that Agri department is actually working with World Bank, and this is where we actually are seeing multiple opportunity where they are going to work with the fintech startups. The data-driven partnership, I mentioned it multiple times during the discussion of API sandbox, and this is where we strongly believe, and we're already working on exposing multiple data sets. And this is the important piece where many fintechs are also looking coming to us saying that can you expose, let's say, DBT data set, the students data sets, or like, the hospital data sets, because by just having a basic yes and no API data call, there are multiple decisions related to credit can be actually taken. And this is something, again, goes back to the way Sanjeev sir had mentioned, there are so many data sets which are actually the alternate data points that only government has access to. So if we can actually club whatever is the existing credit data point which is already out there, which banks and NBFCs has access to, and club that with multiple alternate data sets, and if we can, like, club these two, then we can actually extend it to multiple people who are not part of the credit system at this point in time. So that is where we can actually, the kind of partnership that we are driving with fintech ecosystem can expand further. And this is again an element where we can collaborate with a lot of other states. So if you can just go to the next slide, which will be my last slide. uh, Right. So this is just to like, summarize what all things that we can do, and I had mentioned it during the earlier slides. We strongly believe that these are like, few areas of collaboration with other states, and also like, other corporations who are out there. API sandbox for sure is the most important piece, because we already have the infrastructure. It's like, state owned infrastructure which is already out there. There are various, like, architectural framework which has already been tried and tested. Multiple fintechs are already hosted there. Multiple financial institutes are already there, which does include Kotak, yes, Federal Bank. These, like, they have already shared a lot of this financial, a lot of their like, APIs. We have already also connected our API sandbox with some of the other country API sandboxes. So we have actually created a bridge so that anyone who is in this sandbox can access those, whether it's a UK or a Singapore sandbox. So the way I can look at it, even if it's like, another state, and if the other state wants to, like, use this infrastructure to start with and expose some specific data sets and get access to the other fintech APIs that are out there to start with, we can absolutely, like, look out the right way to, like, model that, and see how we can really leverage on what we already have created. And the other two I have mentioned, this, like, the two programs that we're running. So Find is the investor platform where we have investors, and also we actually we call it as a deals platform. And this is where, I mean, from a specific use case perspective. So the point that I was saying, whether it's a agri department use case, or a health department use case, or a revenue department use case. So if you, like, let's say, list down 3 use cases, and then go to market saying that, do you guys have, like, fintech startups or solutions who can solve these use cases for me, or these problem statements for me? So this platform Find can actually quickly give you a snapshot of companies which are out there in market. And then further, of course, departments can, like, respective state departments can really take it forward from engagement standpoint. Uday is the education platform that we have piloted, and we're actually looking at expanding it further. And this platform is all about the students and the fintech companies, a lot of digital content and hiring that's happening from this. So this is more of an enabler platform, but we're happy to, like, expand it to other states. The students can come on board, they can learn from this particular ecosystem, and this can be built further, and the capacity will actually help the whole country, and like various persona to, like, make it more of a one-stop place where people can learn from each other, and also the same thing can be used by various fintech players to hire from this platform. So I think I'll stop there, Kisam. I understand we have overshoot time.
Thank you, Suniti. Thank you so much to Srinivasji and yourself. It's quite insightful, and the point that you make about there are so many fintechs, but whether they will really solve the challenges or the opportunities that there are in this country is really going to be up to the government, and in particular the state governments, to really set the tone, set the vision for reaching the next millions of people who can benefit from financial technology. And I believe this was the key objective for Additional Secretary Rajaramanji as well. May I just open the floor for maybe 2 questions before we move on then to the next presenter, Mr. Abhishek Singh Ji. In particular, the offer from Maharashtra to work more closely with another state, both to share some of the infrastructure that's been built, but also to share, more in depth the lessons. Are there any comments or questions from Arunachal or Assam in the Northeast region, where there's a tremendous focus on the merchant acceptance ecosystem and in enabling more women merchants to come online, or any other state? I'll just see if there are any open mics. Manoj Kumar जी, आप कुछ सवाल पूछना चाहेंगे? Sorry, you were not audible. I know that connectivity is not always seamless in many of our locations. Well, let's then reserve the questions for the end, when we will have a broader discussion after we've heard from all the presenters. With this, I move on to Mr. Abhishek Ji. Mr. Abhishek Singh has led many landmark initiatives at the Government of India, and the last one being ARISE, which was the Responsible Artificial Intelligence conference with, so many countries from outside India really sort of championing the agenda of responsibility in artificial intelligence. Abhishek Ji, you have a great topic on which you had wanted to share some of the insights from the work that you are leading. So with this, sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Krizom, and it's been an interesting the session so far, wherein one was benefited in listening to the experts from various fields, and the thoughts being shared, which has been shared so far, has set the stage right for sharing a few thoughts on open APIs for improved e-governance. So I have a few slides, given the time constraints and given the need to complete an online conference in the given time. What I would do is that I will share a few slides. I wonder if my slides are visible. Yeah. I hope I am audible and my slides are visible, right?
Yes.
So APIs, when we talk about digital India and when we talk about making services available, what are the key objectives that we have? Like what we do is what we are working on in trying to ensure that how can we make digital infrastructure as a utility available to every citizen, and that includes providing high-speed internet, providing reliable connectivity, providing access, because in our country very often even if services are made online through various measures, if people do not have access to services, it will not really meet the objectives of enabling e-services. And we always try to look at whether whatever we are doing will lead to digital divide, or whether all citizens across the country, wherever we are living, will be able to have access to services. So very often the common services centers, which are the front-end service delivery outlets in rural areas, become very critical in the whole scheme of things, wherein those who do not have a smartphone or those who cannot navigate as an online service can take the help of common service center and get services in an assisted access mode. And then, of course, in enabling digital infrastructure, providing cloud infrastructure and providing cybersecurity measures become very important when we plan the entire gamut of e-services. Then when we other than infrastructure, when we look at services and we look at providing online services and providing services on demand, the issue comes in: can we go on and try to provide services which are integrated, like can a citizen access all the services in the seamless manner across departments without having to go to multiple portals for multiple services. And how do we bring in like faceless services, cashless services, paperless services, and use geographical information system as a decision support system by bringing in GIS interface to services. Then digital empowerment, like the measures which we are taking to in order to ensure availability of services in various Indian languages, enabling voice-based internet services, voice-enabled services, and providing an electronic access to all services. This becomes these three key pillars become the key objectives when we are trying to enable digital services, e-services. So far, a lot has been done. We have more than 200 services, more than 200 departments who are offering these services. We're across projects, more than almost 4,000 services, millions of transactions which are happening daily across the state, across the country. And when we are looking at like how do I whether it's an Aadhaar service, Umang service, or a DigiLocker, passports, Bheem, UPI. Now the next question comes in, like how do we improve the citizen experience and how do we make it happen to access different services from different entities? So therein the objectives become like how do we make a single sign-on experience, end-to-end workflow, whole of government approach. Like when a citizen looks at a service, he doesn't care whether it's a service being offered by X department or Y department. He wants a unified service delivery framework. He makes a service request to the government and he looks at the government as one whole and not as fragmented into various departments. And he expects services to be delivered in a seamless manner without he having to go from portal to portal, as we call it. Like it should not happen that in the earlier physical domain, what was from pillar to post should not become a portal to portal or an app to app challenge for citizens. So what we do is that when we have enabled several services across departments, what we observe that even if services are online, very often these services work in silos and they do not have a centralized interface and there is no connectivity or no exchange of data between various applications. So for example, the database of the rural development department doesn't talk to the database of the health department. Even though a beneficiary who is accessing a service, for say, for example, is a Manrega beneficiary or a PM Awas Yojana beneficiary, he might as well be a beneficiary under Ayushman Bharat. But if he has to access these two services of these two departments, he is very often required to make two separate service requests and the entire data is filled in by himself. Whereas what we are trying to do is that once the services are online and we have a common identifier in the form of Aadhaar as which is a digital identity which maps a citizen to both the services, can a service request for one does not trigger a service delivery for any other department where he is eligible to without making a separate request. So the paradigm that we are trying to make is that instead of the citizen seeking services, the government seeks citizens who are eligible for a particular service. So that's the difference that's going to happen. It can be done today because we have the common building, we have the basic building blocks in the form of Aadhaar that has been set up. And that will ensure efficiency in delivery of services, more effective services, more productive integrated services. And the way we visualize a connected government is like using the basic building blocks of the Aadhaar, the UPI, the DigiLocker, the e-sign framework, the mobile service delivery gateway, the PFMS, the public finance management system, the GST and GEM, and aggregating it for providing on top of these basic building blocks services from multiple government departments and making a citizen making the citizen being able to access these services with a single sign-on in an integrated framework. So this would ensure that public digital platforms which have already, some of it which have already been set up, they provide a framework for building sectoral platforms and the citizen is able to access services to the whole government in one single whole. So that is what Open APIs does. And when the data has to be shared across databases, it's done through Open APIs with the framework which has already been built up. And of course, the other important aspects with regard to data security and the basic data standards, metadata standards are at the very core for ensuring a Open API based service delivery framework in this manner. So how does Open API work? When we look at Aadhaar, what it does is that based on Aadhaar, we are able to provide e-sign. Very often we use it. So if an income tax return is to be signed, it doesn't check with the Aadhaar database and ensures that you are able to sign a document electronically. The DigiLocker relies on that only. It provides a secure, safe vault for storing your data, storing your government documents in a secure vault. The PAN card, now ePAN has been enabled, which allows that based on your Aadhaar, you can instantly generate a PAN card number. Direct benefit transfers. Rajaraman sir spoke about how DBT really helped in the pandemic when we had to transfer money to the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Just because the bank accounts were linked to the Aadhaar numbers, we were able to easily transfer money without any duplication, and it was so instantaneous that we did not face a major crisis, even though during the lockdown, a lot of people had lost their livelihoods and all. The Aadhaar-enabled payment system is revolutionizing the way we access payments. The Jeevan Praman, which pensioners have to submit, this also relies on a open API-based integration with Aadhaar system. Income tax returns, I can go on and on. So Aadhaar, once we have the basic of the building block, then APIs with the Aadhaar system is enabling a lot of e-services, which is resulting in a better access of services for the citizens. Similarly, in UPI, Unified Payment Interface, which is the fintech revolution that India has done, which many countries are seeking to replicate, it also relies on APIs, and it's helping create mobile wallets. It's making payment system very seamless. One is able to transfer funds from one entity, one financial institution, one financial entity to another without any delay, and even small payments are made to happen. And this is being integrated into all the services that are being offered. So whenever you are accessing e-commerce, whenever you're accessing any other services, UPI enables that interface. The next level for this will be in fast forwarding the access to credit and microfinance. So once this is integrated with credit and microfinance, and based on the socio-economic profile of a citizen, one would be able to provide these services by using APIs integrated with the UPI system. The GEM system also works through open APIs, wherein it's used for verifying the buyers, sellers, integrating with PFMS, ensuring that entities are verified, ensuring that payments happen seamlessly, verification happens through Aadhaar. So GEM is also relying on open APIs for making services, for simplifying the way the procurements are done in the government sector. And it's really revolutionized. More than 70,000 crores of orders have been placed on GEM ecosystem, and it has cut down the procurement cycle for the government. And how it is done, it's integrating with the all procurement system through APIs. Similar example is the GSTN system, whether it's the new registration of the GSTN, with the PAN validation, the generation of e-way bills, integration with banks, with the HSN codes, with the railways for freight planning. The entire data is shared through open APIs, which makes the GSTN such an integrated and a simplified system. So APIs create a lot of value in enabling services which requires integration across departments and across databases. So to facilitate this ecosystem, MeitY has laid down several policies. One of them is the data sharing and accessibility policy, the NDSAP, which was notified in 2012. Then policy on open application programming interfaces, that was notified in 2015. The India Enterprise Architecture Framework 2018, which is enabling various departments to adopt the platform-based architecture. Digital service standards were notified in 2019, and implementation guidelines in open API policy, which was notified this year. So this is helping various governments to adopt it, and the most recent example is the National Digital Health Mission, which is being implemented on an open API-based framework. The key open initiatives under API is the open government data, wherein more than 65,000 APIs are available across 174 departments. A lot of data sets are there. So the entire data exchange happens through open APIs on the open government portal, the data.gov.in portal, which allows exchange of data between various entities. The DigiLocker is a classic example of open API application, wherein documents ranging from your Aadhaar card to your PAN card to your driving license to your academic documents are all available in a seamless manner. In fact, the National Academic Depository, wherein the class 10th and 12th certificates are available in the DigiLocker, is being used extensively this year for verifying academic credentials for giving admissions. Like this year, Delhi University, when they were giving the admissions for their graduate program, they verified all the academic credentials through open APIs from the DigiLocker. So So the students were not required to submit their credentials to the certified copies, printouts of their certificates. It was done electronically through APIs. And the similar thing was done by Karnataka Police Recruitment Department. And once all academic documents of the higher education departments are also available in DigiLocker, it will greatly facilitate a paperless kind of verification system for academic documents. And DigiLocker is also being now upgraded to become the health locker, wherein people can store their electronic health records in the DigiLocker, which will be generated from various entities wherein people access health services. The National Data Highway is again another initiative where 600 APIs are built in, and the entire ecosystem is being created with the DigiLocker, with the Umang, with the Aadhaar framework, and that would allow any department who wants to offer an API-based service by verifying with the Aadhaar or the DigiLocker system to integrate it with the simple APIs. This is the example of the health ecosystem, how DigiLocker works. What it does is that in the health services in DigiLocker, right now we have the identity system with Aadhaar, DL, PAN, passport, which is integrated with the DigiLocker. The academic services are being built up. Financial services are being built up on DigiLocker, wherein all insurance documents, banks, loans, income tax returns will be available in the DigiLocker. And health services also based on various health service providers and with a consent framework will be integrated in the DigiLocker framework. The examples of national digital public health platforms, like what is doing with open APIs is that like a citizen was accessing health services from multiple applications, whether it's Ayushman Bharat or RCH program or a disease surveillance program. So all these services are integrated with an open API platform into a unified platform, and it helps in generating electronic health records, health ID for everyone, and an AI data analytics layer over that. And the benefit to the citizen is that he gets personalized services of various kinds at one point. So one unified access delivery with the use of open APIs, which works by data exchange with across various services which he was accessing earlier. The same thing is being done in agriculture, wherein all services that is being offered through various schemes is integrated with the use of open APIs, and a farmer is able to get real-time services in an integrated manner across departments. So he may be able to access services from agriculture, whether PM Kisan scheme, he may be able to access services from veterinary, animal husbandry, and will ensure that he is able to have a common link across the entire thing with a single sign-on system based on open APIs. Similar thing has been done in education. I will not spend time on that because I think only 10 minutes was given to that. But what education also in education open APIs does is that integrates all the services, so whether it's e-learning, whether it's academic records, whether it's the Diksha platform, or whether it's the National Digital Library or the National Testing Agency's platform. The entire thing is integrated with open APIs on a unified platform. So the work is going on in trying to develop this blueprint, which will enable integrated education services for students, which will ensure they will have access to right from their preschooling to higher education. The entire educational services integrated through open APIs, through various education institutions, and all academic records available in his DigiLocker for a paperless kind of experience. So all that I'd like to conclude by saying that open API is revolutionizing e-governance and governance. Instead of from what we were doing as a silos-based online services, now we are able to offer services in an integrated manner, in a whole of government approach that would really lead to better quality of services and better ease of living for the citizens. That's all. Thank you.
Abhishek ji, thank you so much. You're absolutely right that for citizens, government is one, and therefore the amazing efforts that are happening by the government to make access of services to citizens seamless at the last mile is indeed an effort that I believe everyone is behind. So thank you so much. We have a few more participants that have joined. Welcome to Kapil Dev Pandey from Uttar Pradesh and his colleagues Eba Singh as well. We will now go to Karnataka, and I have the pleasure of welcoming our officials from the government of Karnataka, Mr. Rajiv Chawla, who is the additional chief secretary from the government of Karnataka, who has led some of the great initiatives around the agriculture database called Fruits that is, showing some amazing results and some of the key lessons there, as well as Ms. Meena Nagaraj, who is stepping in for Dr. E.V. Ramana Reddy, the additional Chief Secretary to the Chief Minister, because of some legislative meetings. He has requested that Ms. Meena Nagaraj make the presentation on the overall fintech ecosystem in the great state of Karnataka. So with this, Madam, over to you.
Thank you. Apologies, I will have to turn off my camera because I'm finding some connectivity issues, but I will be making the presentation. Thank you. I think we've heard for the last 1.5 to 2 hours, globally, nearly 420 billion transactions worth 7 trillion are expected to shift from cash to card and digital payments by 2023, an increase of almost to 48 trillion by 2030. As we all know that India has adapted really well in terms of real-time digital payment infrastructure driven by UPI and 24/7 NEFT. With newer players launching buy now, pay later schemes, consumer convenience is bound to improve. And Bengaluru overall has accounted for 23.31% of peer-to-merchant transactions in 2019 alone. And Karnataka saw the highest adoption of digital payments, which is about 26.64%. Bangalore not only is a Silicon Valley of India, which is highly cosmopolitan, has resources, environment, infrastructure for innovation, which is on par with global standards. In terms of fintech scenario, we have almost housed about more than 611 fintech startups. We have more which are supported basically by 75 plus accelerators, and which goes on adding around 1,400 startups annually. And Karnataka, as a government initiative, we are also having vision groups for IT and startups exclusively, where we collaborate with industry. And we have a Bangalore FinTech Forum, which is launched in association with NASSCOM and Startup Karnataka and TIE and Startup Accelerator, the GAIN, who are the major stakeholders who try to promote this entire area. For this, as we've seen recently, we've had unicorns from our area like the Zerodha, Razorpay, and Cred. On the governmental perspective, we have provided an enabling environment. Enabling ecosystem environment, which we call the Elevate program, which is basically funds from idea to POC grants for startups. This program so far has funded 470 companies for an INR of 114 crores, which 76% of the companies are based in Bangalore region, and 25 plus companies have already raised follow-up capital within the 3 years of launch of this program. And this program is also supported by number of incubators and center of excellences, where as on today, we have incubated 570 companies, and the total incubation space supported and provided by government is about 1,25,000 square feet. And this is one of the flagship programs that the government of Karnataka has taken up mainly to support the startup ecosystem. Next. Further, as an enabling ecosystem environment, we also ensure that we have a lot of MOUs with various countries, where we call the Global Innovation Alliance partners, where we have G2G partnerships, technology sharing, cooperation on skilling, trade promotion, soft landing for startups, and academia and R&D collaborations. So far, we've forged partnership with France, where we have signed MOU with Business France, which is mainly focuses on with focus on fintech, and we have signed partnership with Bahrain, where with Bahrain Economic Development Board to promote cooperation in artificial intelligence, fintech, and other emerging technologies. The recently concluded Bangalore Tech Summit, which is our annual flagship technology conference, has been a strategic platform to bring together technocrats, thought leaders, innovators, investors, and policymakers across sectors. The 23rd edition of the Bangalore Tech Summit was inaugurated and attended by Honorable Prime Minister of India with other key leaders of like Anand Mahendra and Nitin Kamath, who was the founder of Zerodha. Totally, we had 20,000 attendees, 25 countries, 100 plus sessions, and 350 speakers. Next. To facilitate the entire ecosystem on fintech, the Karnataka government has come out with the Karnataka Innovation Authority Act, which provides for regulatory sandbox, which allows firms employing emerging technologies to set up their regulatory sandboxes and test and provide test beds for these firms to ensure that they are able to test new innovative products and ideas. Next. So state government has adopted multifaceted approach to ensure Karnataka remains the national leader in innovation and it enhances its place in the global economy. This includes, we have a lot of programs on skilling, incubation startups, developing global alliances and focus on tier 2 city, which we call it beyond Bengaluru, and sector specific engagement and provide a legal framework for supporting innovations. In the banking and financial sector, while Reserve Bank of India and most of the commercial banks are headquartered in Mumbai, fintech innovations have majorly happened in Bangalore. State government aims to bring Bengaluru and Karnataka as one of the largest and vibrant fintech clusters in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if we can move on to the next slide, and may I kindly request Mr. Chawla. Sure. In the meanwhile, may I request Anuja to kindly present the use case on the land digitization.
Sure. Thanks, Kezom, and very good afternoon to all the dignitaries that have made time from their busy schedules and are being part of this important session. So I will be focusing on the land digitization efforts of Karnataka, which is Bhumi. Bhumi is a land record management system which is aimed at collecting information related to land ownership, previous ownership, soil type, etc. This was a flagship product of the state government, and Karnataka has been a pioneer in digitizing the land records way back in 2000, along with the Ministry of Rural Development. So this was mainly aimed to remove the inefficiencies and corruption that exist in maintenance of records. Bhumi, although it is an umbrella system, but it has led to the development of several digital platforms under it, which are both P2G as well as G2P. So we have Pahani Online, iWallet, Parihara, and Crop Loan Waiver System. I'll speak about each of them very briefly. As you can see that Pahani is a system which provides record of rights to the farmers by payment of a minimal fee. Likewise, iWallet acts as something similar to the mobile recharge people who are the local entrepreneurs who made payments.
As I will begin from where Anuja left off, she was trying to explain the Bhumi project and the four components which are inbuilt. On the iWallet side, it's a payment system that permits volunteers and local entrepreneurs to deliver citizen services of revenue department, including the RTC, very easily. With respect to BT Parihara, which is on the G2P side, it's an automated IT system that enables the government to make input subsidy payments to the farmers in a efficient manner using the Aadhaar-based, Aadhaar-enabled payment services, AEPS. Finally, the fourth component, the crop loan waiver scheme, which is again on the G2P side. This is an innovative application which was developed in-house by the Bhumi Monitoring Cell within the Revenue Department, Government of Karnataka. And this enables direct benefit transfers of loan waiver projects by the state governments, again through the APS services. One of the primary advantages has been that with the help of the crop loan waiver scheme under this project, a lot of fake crop loan waiver sort of weeded out and checked through this initiative. For instance, this has led the mandatory Aadhaar linkages with the crop loan waiver software has saved at least 5,500 crore of taxpayers' money. Close to about 22 lakh loan accounts were identified by commercial banks for about 4.2 lakh farmers who were identified as ineligible as they had loan accounts with commercial banks as well as cooperative banks. All this cross-referencing was achieved through the data through the Bhumi initiative based on Aadhaar and CLWS data linkages. Of the 19 lakh loan accounts of this, close to 19 lakh loan accounts were first identified by cooperative banks. 50,000 accounts out of these were discovered to have dual entries. Till date, the government has paid close to over 14,000 crores to 25 lakh, more than 25 lakh farmer loan accounts as direct benefit transfers. There are some other states who have initiated similar measures in terms of digitization of land records. Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, West Bengal, AP, UP, and Gujarat are some of them. Close to about 90% is the current rate of coverage in terms of computerization of land records, excluding Karnataka amongst the other states and at a overall level within the country. What this entire initiative focuses on is on addressing the main pain point, which is with respect to a lot of litigation that's pending in the courts in relation to property matters. According to Niti Aayog, the property cases on an average take about 20 years to settle, resulting in millions of Indians who are not able to use their assets as collateral to borrow from formal financial system. A lot of title documents are missing or people are unable to produce them, and that creates a lot of issue for any lending that is based on property. So this issue essentially gets weeded out with the digitization of the records. Some of the other needs for land digitization or reasons why this needs to be supported on a priority basis is to increase the formal credit supply, which we alluded to as better availability of collateral and documentation, which would enable a lot of low-income communities to use that for the purpose of availing loans from formal institutions.
Abhishek, thank you so much. I'm going to interrupt you here because we do have Mr. Chawla back on. No story about Karnataka is complete without Mr. Chawla's contributions. So over to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Today, I would start from where your colleague stopped talking about Bhumi. We would talk about a portal called Fruits Portal. Fruits handles the farmers. The full form, of course, which is not really important for the sake of completeness, is called Farmers Registration and Unified Beneficiary Information System. We have 70 lakh farmers and we have 200 lakh plots. These 200 lakh plots are all there in Bhumi. How do we really help farmers? What all farmers need? They need to apply for government schemes every day and have to prove who they are, what is their land record. They need to prove their caste, they need to prove their income, they need their financial address, which is of course now Aadhaar, but earlier the account number. And they also need to show which crop they grow. They need to take loan from the banks. They need to connect to the outside world for selling their items. And of course, they need to connect to the input suppliers, fertilizers, seeds, pesticides. I'm very happy to inform that Fruits handles all of this. This initiative of course, starts with farmers registering onto the system, and there are various ways of registering which are mentioned in the slide. It is called registration. Now there are about 70 lakh farmers who were registered at various point of time. The PM Kisan Man project was one which gave a fillip to this program, and everybody then finally registered onto this program. So we now have these 70 lakh farmers there. When we say farmers, it is not just those who are owning land. There are people who don't own land, but they do farming business. There are people who don't own land, but let's say are involved in animal husbandry. Those are also farmers. People who are doing sericulture are also farmers. So all these categories of people, including landless people, who are involved in the activity which is agriculture or allied, are a part of this database. Huge database, 70 lakh farmers with complete financial address. That means each of their Aadhaar number, not just for deduplication, but also for routing the money which is to be routed to them. And I'll explain in next slides as to what all this routing is. Kindly go to the next slide. Now, there are, as I said, there are many users, and this slide mainly talks about the departmental users. You have all users who connect to this. The farmer or the department, on the behalf of the farmer, can add their land, they can modify the personal details, they can print their card also in case they want to print their card. A farmer can print his fruits card in case he feels comfortable with that. And then, of course, all the departments connect on. Abhishek spoke about Open API standards. On the basis of this, they talk to various systems, and systems are all mentioned below. You have something called K-Kisan, which is acronym for agriculture, and then you have something called Hasiru, which is for horticulture. Then you have something called Pashu Bhagya, which is for, in Karnataka, we have Bhagya everywhere. Pashu Bhagya is something which handles with animal husbandry, and you have many departments which are all connected to them. As I said, the departments gain a lot. They don't have to get papers again from the farmers. Abhishek spoke about it. In fact, the Sanjeev Kaushik also spoke that once you do a eKYC with one bank, others should be able to use. Similarly here, once they are connected to the fruits, all the departments can then use the data which has become available in the fruits database pertaining to that farmer because he applied for some other scheme. Of course, as I said, for all the schemes you need to apply through fruits. Naturally, fruits there becomes in a way an aggregator, what you call as account aggregator. Here it is a data aggregator. It has complete data about farmers, which of course is given by them, and they are aware that they are giving the data, and there is all consents which are there in place to see that data is given to different departments. The farmer consent is there that yes, you can share my data. In any case, it is being shared for his purpose only. Needless to say, and this is very exciting, Abhishek again spoke about it. The fruits has created an entitlement-based system. We know everything about farmer, including the crop which is growing, and therefore most of the benefits which are to be given to all the farmers, for example, calamity, or for example, COVID relief, we know each and everything about farmer. So there is absolutely no need for farmer to apply for such mass benefit programs because we know who are they. We have their financial address. We also know who are eligible for it. For example, in COVID time, they had to give some money to those people who had grown maize. Now, we knew who are those farmers who have grown maize because we do what is called crop survey, which is a very important component. We know during every season who has grown what on all the 200 lakh plots, which is a part of the fruits. And because I have their financial address as Aadhaar, all I do is to push the money. And I must say it must have taken a day or two to push money to those 11 lakh farmers who had grown maize. during the current year. So this complete system in a way therefore becomes an entitlement management system also for the government. The farmers don't even have to apply. All they do is that they get a message that so much of money for the following reason has been transferred to your account, the Aadhaar seeded account. Next slide. Now, as is the case with any integrated system, the fruits connect to many systems, which is of course natural. It connects to a state DBT portal. I am proud of saying that in Karnataka, complete payment by governments are all Aadhaar-based payment, and there is a common DBT portal for all the schemes, And then of course the natural things like connecting for all these NPCIs and banks and our our own Khajane system, the treasury system, etc., is all part of the game. It's a part of the fruit system. As you can see on the right hand side, fruits connect to various databases, which I have explained to you. The departments need not collect any data. The data is already there in the system, and therefore things become completely paperless, and everybody has FID, what is called the fruit ID. Next slide. These are some of the numbers. As I said, number of farmers are now about 70 lakh, and all these marginal farmers and female farmers, everybody is registered there, and you can they gave you. There is a typical problem here. I want to give money, let us say, to those people whose coconut have been affected. Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra are major coconut growing areas. What if I want to give benefits to the coconut growing farmers who are less than, let us say, 3 acres? Now, in a manual system or for any other state, it would take at least 6 months to 1 year to find out this data. Now, in fruits, I know who is growing coconut because I have a crop data season after season for last 4 years. Because I have their total holdings, I know who has grown, who has less than 3 acres. And I also have their financial address, which is Aadhaar, which does not change with time. And therefore, you can do this work electronically, sitting at home. You don't really require any physical work to be done. You don't have to go to the field because you've already gone to the field. You have their data of the crop they have grown and of course all other things. So now you find that there are people, the department traditionally collects this data for whatever reasons to pay to these people, and when fruits was used, you saved 35 crore rupees. So this is bound to happen. There's nothing great about it. It's a natural corollary of this process that if you have a good data and a good IT system, and of course Aadhaar for deduplication, land records, etc., you will certainly be more effective. You will save on the money. You will save on the time also. You will save on the time also. And of course, I will explain some of these details later also. Next slide. Now, I wanted to explain a little more about, one picture which I wanted to give. We are now working with some organizations like iSpirit on one side and VT on the other side to create a consent framework in the fruits portal. The idea is that now that we have a database, we know what is the crop being grown, we need to now connect to all the bulk purchasers, all these big basket type of people. And we also want to connect to all fertilizers, pesticides, and seeds growing companies. The idea would be that we become a middleman or a mediator, if you don't use that word, and allow these 70 lakh farmers to connect to these people who are there, to the people who are to the supplier purchasers, And these people can then connect to each other and then find out who are the people who are going to give me, let us say, 100 tons of tomato in the month of January. They should be located within 50 kilometers from Bangalore. The fruit system obviously will have all this because you have let long of each property. So it would therefore be possible for them to find out, and then they can connect to these farmers because the mobile number of all the farmers are there in the database. It would therefore be important that we have a consent framework in the place. So it's a matter of time, I think another 3 to 6 months, that this database would now be exposed to the industry where they can, the industry can connect to farmers on a consent framework basis, and then of course buy from them or sell to them. This is all I wanted to say about fruits. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chavlaji, thank you so much. And one of the benefits of a digital learning session in the pandemic is that beyond the 60 participants that we have across the nation, many other participants can also listen to this very important proceeding that's being recorded. So thank you again so much, Mr. Chavla, for your valuable time. We move on to Niti Aayog, who will speak on blockchain. We were going to have our senior advisor, Anna Ji, from Niti Aayog. However, she's been called out for some last minute emergency at work, and therefore we have Mr. Tane Mahindru with us, who is been working very closely with Anaji on the blockchain policy and some of the frameworks that they are putting together, along with, of course, the other government departments such as METI. So over to you, Taneji.
Thank you. I'll quickly just over the next few minutes, and I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, Tane.
Thank you. So just over the next few 5 to 10 minutes, I'll just be taking you through the strategy discussion paper that Niti Aayog released in January this year called Blockchain, the India Strategy. And before talking about some pilots that we were doing and perhaps some lessons that can be abstracted from them. The strategy itself focuses on what sort of potential value proposition blockchain has in India, and especially in improving governance. The strategy paper itself looks at, apart from the value proposition, what sort of consideration should be kept in mind when creating a specific use case for blockchain implementation, and whether or not blockchain would in fact be useful for this specific purpose. And on the basis of the few pilots that we've done now, actually between 2018 and 2020, or at least the beginning of 2020, what are the lessons that Niti Aayog took away, broadly what's covered in the paper? Three major focus areas that were highlighted in the paper was largely to see how blockchain can be used for first the ease of doing business, and specifically at this government to business interface. Examples including blockchain for contract enforcement or even awards of permits. The second is more on the ease of governance, and this is one of the case studies which I'll be diving slightly deeper into in a few slides. But essentially how government to government interfaces can be improved by using blockchain, what the utility of blockchain in these interfaces can be. And of course, the ease of living, how improvement of government to citizen interfaces can take place. And I think some of these ideas were touched upon in a number of presentations that we've had today already, but maybe just slightly more specifically on blockchain at this point. Could you move to the next slide, please? So I mean, really quickly, I think most people are now comfortable with what blockchain is, but I mean, just to sort of create a shared understanding for the next few slides, just a very perspective on what the utility of blockchain is, and we can get into blocks and encryption codes and all of that. But I mean, at its essence, a lot of the utility of blockchain can be, or at least in how we would use the term blockchain, can be boiled down to the following. Typically, when two parties are transacting with each other, and these parties can be pretty much anybody, it can be a citizen or another government body or a business, there is a need for an intermediary for this transaction to create trust in the transaction, since party A and party B might not have reason to trust each other. And typically what this creates is inefficiencies in processes in many scenarios, where you need to have some form of verification process or certification process that a transaction has taken place correctly. And many forms of institutions honestly today make up this sort of trusted intermediary section that sort of facilitates these transactions. What blockchain can theoretically do is it can eliminate the need for an institutional intermediary, and by allowing party A and party B to interact via a specific blockchain platform, which is inherently trusted by virtue of how it is designed, eliminate those inefficiencies that are caused due to the introduction of this trusted intermediary. Very simply put, that via using the blockchain, you can, the system itself is trustable by virtue of it's being based on blockchain, and thus your transition to intermediaries with code is how it can be summarized. Could we go to the next slide, please? I think one thing that we do like to highlight very specifically whenever we're talking about this strategy is just to note that in many cases the established IT systems can do a better job than blockchain for most functions. There are specific functions for which blockchain can add a lot of utility, but these need to be tested and need to be sort of verified and piloted before sort of moving towards the sort of scale of investment, both in terms of time and money, that blockchain implementation will require. So in the paper, and this is available online, the Niti Aayog has presented a sort of checklist or a sort of flow for how you can evaluate specific use cases for whether or not blockchain is a good, in fact, technology for it. And I'm not going to go into each and every bit, but just, I mean, starting off, right, is there a need to reduce intermediaries? Is there a sort of inefficiency being created by how processes are being implemented today that can be remedied via blockchain? Are there two or more parties or stakeholders involved? I mean, and this is essentially a question which results in this sort of deficit of trust, which can then be bridged via blockchain. Are you working with digital assets? And so this I think just looking at use cases through this lens is a useful first or preliminary step towards assessing anything for blockchain. And of course, this needs to be supplemented by much more rigorous analysis, but was largely released just to sort of guide first level of thinking when various stakeholders are thinking about using blockchain. And I would recommend just sort of going through this if there's any sort of use case that is being evaluated for its viability. Next slide, please. So this is one of the pilots that we had done in collaboration with the with GNFC and the Ministry of Fertilizers, the Gujarat Fertilizer Company, GNFC, and it's an extremely reduced or simplified version of the process that is involved in this or was involved in the DBT, in the subsidy disbursement at the time. I think this was at the end of 2018 or beginning of 2019, and we partnered with PwC and Intel for the implementation of this, but largely found that when and sorry, just quickly to describe the diagram, the blue lines describe how the fertilizer is flowing from the manufacturer to the farmer. The pink represents how the receipts are flowing, and yellow represents how payments are flowing. But largely found that at specific steps, certain transfers need to be certified, either when the fertilizer is being transferred or when the receipts are being transferred. And at these points of verification, there was often a delay in verification, which led to overall sort of elongation of the time taken for these processes, often taking more than 2 months before the subsidy was actually being returned to manufacturers. And the conversations we had at the time with them said that this was affecting their own sort of cash flows and the sort of delays in subsidy and stuff like that. What we found when we were able to implement this process on blockchain was by virtue of sort of using a blockchain platform to record, for example, how the fertilizer is moving from the manufacturer to warehouse, and how and the payment itself is being recorded on the platform. You eliminated the need for sort of this quote unquote third party certification of all these transfers, and you were able to significantly improve um, the time taken for the subsidy disbursement in a very constrained environment in the pilot process, where I think a lot of external factors were not accounted for, but still we were able to reduce the amount of time taken quite significantly, in some cases from up to 2 months to less than 2 or 3 days. So this was one sort of one use case that thought specifically in the context of the broader fintech environment, and we've heard already, I think, in a few talks, first by Mr. Rajaraman, and the other talk by the government of Maharashtra and Mr. Srinivas on how they're thinking about using piloting blockchain in DBT. So I won't go too much on that. There's a last slide, which I think, if it could be moved to the last slide, it's just sort of very, very briefly touching upon the fact that some of these things that have been covered previously, and the fact that blockchain can be used similarly in DBT subsidy disbursement or in sort of PFMS processes to remove the delays caused by, let's say, bill verification and stuff like that, since the platform itself can add a certain degree of trust to the transactions that are being recorded on it. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Taneji, thank you so much for this elaboration from on behalf of Ms. Anna Roy at Niti Aayog, and the important work on blockchain that's happening, of course, with Niti Aayog, but also with METI and others. And there's a Center for Excellence that's already in place, where a lot of the discussions and collaborations are getting coordinated through. We move on to our esteemed speakers from the state of Tamil Nadu. We have Mr. Thiruhans Raj Verma ji, Additional Chief Secretary at the Government of Tamil Nadu, as well as his colleague, Mr. Sanjay Tyagi ji. With this, may I please hand it over to the great state of Tamil Nadu. Thank you so much, sir, for your contribution to today's dialogue.
Warm welcome and good evening to all the participants of this event. My name is Hansraj Verma. I am the Additional Chief Secretary, IT Department, Government of Tamil Nadu. Today our theme of presentation is Fintech Startups Ecosystem in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, we work very proactively with all the stakeholders. Next to me is Mr. Sanjay Tyagi. He is the Director of STPI Chennai. We work in very close partnership with STPI on a concept called FinBlue. the details of which he will be making this presentation. I like to give a bigger picture about the ecosystem available in Tamil Nadu for all the startups and in particular fintech. Chennai is the capital of the BFSI sector, the financial sector in India. We have a huge number of financial BPOs, the World Bank, leading banks. We have a very capable technical workforce in the financial sector. We have an excellent ecosystem in Chennai in terms of IIT Madras, Anna University. We have the Tidal Park, the Tisel Park for Life Sciences. We have the Ramju IT City. So in a one single location, concentration of human talent in partnership with the academia is unparalleled in India. Government of Tamil Nadu, under the dynamic leadership of Honorable Chief Minister, is very keen to move this ecosystem to the other major towns, corporations of Tamil Nadu, namely Coimbatore, Madurai, Krishnapalli, Salem, Hosur. These are also the nodes of the defense corridor, where there is going to be tremendous scope in terms of manufacturing and startups. Now, coming to the fintech ecosystems in Tamil Nadu. Our partner Tamil Nadu, or rather Chennai, is the SaaS capital of India. We have Zoho, Freshworks, and a number of startups here. Tamil Nadu will nurture and propel a number of unicorns in this sector. So this is the kind of commitment which, as the Secretary Government of Tamil Nadu, I offer to all the potential investors, potential talent for setting up their bases in the fintech sector in Tamil Nadu. With these broad words and broad introduction, context setting, I now will pass on the mic to my colleague and very important stakeholder of the Government of Tamil Nadu, Ms. Tyagi, the Director of STPI Chennai, who will talk about the various initiatives and partnerships which we have with the Government of Tamil Nadu and other stakeholders. Over to Mr. Tyagi, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to present the startup ecosystem of Tamil Nadu to you all. As Honorable Additional Chief Secretary have briefed you that we are having a very thriving industry in the SaaS. We are having a lot of 400 companies of the world which have outsourced their financial services job in Chennai. And that's why we found it befitting to set up a center of excellence in fintech over here. We have given a very interesting name to this. It is called as FinBlue. Fin stand for the finance, and blue color represent the unrestricted and unabated growth. So FinBlue stand for the unrestricted, unabated innovation in fintech. So this is a fintech center of excellence which is being set up in a joint venture with STPI and the Government of Tamil Nadu. The partners of the FinBlue, we are actually doing it in a very, very collaborative way. We have taken, the industry participation into this. We are having the Intellect Design, who are into the core banking software for last 25 years. They are the partner into the system. NatWest Group, which were earlier known as the Royal Bank of Scotland, they are the partner. NPCI, National Payment Corporation of India. Fintech is the venture capital partner. ICICI Bank, BNY Mellon, Bank of New York Mellon, Yes Bank, PayPal, and IIT Madras, including the industry body like TAI Chennai and the Amazon. They are also the partner with us. So this is a very collaborative environment. We have started this program, and we have taken a chief mentor from the industry, the CEO of the Intellect Design, Mr. Arun Jain, who is the chief mentor of this initiative of the STPI and the Government of Tamil Nadu. Next, please. Next slide, please. So we have operationalized the FinBlue by applying the design thinking model, and we thought that why not we should discuss it with all the stakeholders together and find out that what is required to set up a center of excellence in fintech. And we have invited the CTOs of the national and the international banks at Chennai, and we had a one-day workshop, and we identified 6 pillars, which is, which is there in the slide, which says that the first pillar is the underlying understanding of the buyer's need. What are the opportunities for the fintech? What are the international best practices happening in the world? What is the funding framework? What is the benchmarking? We should also create certain amount of the benchmarking of the products which is going to be developed under the FinBlue program. What should be the contribution of this center of excellence towards the policy, advocacy, and the technology framework? And what should be the framework for the mentoring and the training for the startup ecosystem? These are the 6 pillars which has been identified by all the stakeholders and deliberated upon for one day together. Next slide, please. So these are the focus, pillars on which the Center of Excellence shall be working. Is working already for last 1.5 years. We are very successfully able to create a sandbox, a FinBlue sandbox, wherein we have brought in all the required resources for the fintech startup, wherein they can test their products in a very very easy environment where there is no restriction, and NPCI and all the banks have given their APIs to us. IIT Madras have given their software testing tools. Intellect Design have given us the core banking software, and we are having low-code software from Taurus Innovation as well. PayPal and ICICI, HDFC, all these people have given us the APIs which will be hosted, which has already been hosted on this sandbox. So there are 2 types of the sandbox in the world. One is pre-production grade sandbox. Another is the production grade sandbox. This sandbox in STPI FinBlue, we are having both the elements of the sandbox into this. When we are talking about the tools which has been provided to develop the application, they are into the pre-production category. And when we are saying that we are having the APIs where the new application which are being developed can be tested, that is the production grade. That makes it production grade sandbox. Next, please. So we have already initiated this journey. The churning have already started happening, and we have done a couple of the this pitch fest for identifying the fintech startups. They have actually applied, and we have identified the fintechs, the startup into lending, payment, asset management, transactions, and in so many domains which are now working with this in the FinBlue domain, FinBlue umbrella in Chennai. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. So a couple of the startups which have joined us, I would like to take you through them. The Redwood provides the unbiased. Please go back. The Redwood they are into the wealth management. The companies are into the last mile, providing the services to the farming community, and there are companies which are working into the PDS system. Not only they are providing the services into Tamil Nadu, but they are also providing services to the elsewhere in the state. Next, please. So Oasis is the one stop which I was talking about. They are into public distribution system. They are actually providing huge services in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. And they are a Tamil Nadu-based company which is being supported by STPI and Government of Tamil Nadu through India BPO scheme and the Fintech, FinBlue program. They are the product of the system, and they are able to develop their Fintech products and integrated the payment gateways for providing services to the masses, to the citizens of this state of Tamil Nadu. Next, please. So there are another, ThoughtBit Technologies Private Limited, which is into the GST domain. It is also again a Tamil Nadu-based company, which is making it easier for the people to file their GST papers, and they are taking care of the GST ecosystem. They have also integrated the payment gateway into their software, and they are very successful, and they are providing services again to the citizen of Tamil Nadu and the enterprise as well. So these are the another example of the how the companies are providing services to the banks. They are helping them to deal with their customers. They are doing all the credit worthiness. They are checking their credit worthiness, and similarly, this iServices focused area is banking, document management, finance, accounting. So fintech, the center of excellence, fintech has become very useful for the enterprise to go for the digital way. War is into where the financial services for private limited is providing the consultancy, and they are into their brand name is known as indiafiling.com. This is another company of the fintech which is operating in Tamil Nadu and integrated the payment gateways with their applications and able to help the citizen for filing their income tax return. So these are the few companies which has actually set up their operations after testing their model through our sandbox. Way forward is that we want to take this sandbox to an international level. We would like to co-sandbox with the other countries where we want to share our resources and to facilitate the trans-border cross-country financial transactions, and we want to execute and implement the partnership between the cross-country partners, and we want to work with the various governments for having effective data sharing policy for enhancing the cross-border financial transaction. So this is the way forward, and this is the humble beginning which we have made in the fintech scenario, and we are very much hopeful that ultimately we will be migrating to a national center of excellence in fintech. So, I mean, the key takeaway is the fundamental, the role of the fintech in promoting. I mean, we want to promote the enterprises. We want to, promote them to make them digitized, and we want to, reach out to all those people, unbanked people who are, who are not able to enjoy the services of the banking. And fintech is a great enabler. And I can only quote the 60 and 70% of the CIOs, world banks have said that they would like to work with the fintech startups to reach out to the last person in the value chain for providing the banking services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your contributions. Indeed, so much is happening across India, including in Tamil Nadu, and great that these lessons are being shared and being recorded also for other state participants who couldn't come today. We move on to the last state of today's learning session from Odisha. Unfortunately, they had an important meeting that has come up. So Mr. Manoj Mishra ji, he is unable to join. However, he has asked our colleagues to please present on their behalf, because the content has been developed together with Odisha to really distill some of the finer points in terms of the learnings to be shared with other states. So I'm going to request, with Rajaramanji's permission, I'm going to request Prerna, Ms. Prerna Saxena, to please share Odisha's story with the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Kezam. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my privilege to represent Odisha here and talk about an encouraging startup story which is coming from the eastern part of the India. Most often, most of us know about startups and technological advancements happening primarily in southern and western states, but Odisha government has taken initiatives to promote fintech, to develop technical talent in their state. And as of now, they have more than 700 startups in the state. Their startup policy is very encouraging, and it is currently sector agnostic, which helps them to promote startups across various use cases, be it healthcare, be it art, craft, textiles, or anything. And as of now, there are more than 21 venture funded startups. They also have an incubation space, which is promoting talent development, and they are also working with the nodal agencies in the state. So given the impetus on the startup, it's going to be a big hub for startups in the eastern part of the country. And we're hoping the story will not just be in Bhubaneswar, limited to Bhubaneswar, but it will also move on to the other smaller cities, relatively lesser known cities in the state. Next slide, please. In terms of enabling environment, the Startup Odisha story is emerging well. There's a startup secretariat under the Director of Industries and state government which has been set up. And India, amongst the top 3 startup hubs, Odisha has emerged as part of it. It is providing investment and policy interventions for startups in the state. The objective definitely is to unleash potential of underserved segments or the segments which are not primarily showcased when it comes to promoting startups. So there's specific emphasis on women entrepreneurs. There's also emphasis on entrepreneurs coming from underserved sections like SC, ST, and other categories. The benefits for startups being provided by state government are really encouraging. There is a monthly allowance of rupees per month for 1 year and 2,000 per month for startups led by social groups. There is also support for assistance in terms of acquiring equipment or raw material. There is a pool of mentors who are coming on board and nurturing these aspirants on developing their business models through the Bhubaneswar. And it's very commendable to see that Government of Odisha has partnered with some reputed private players like Facebook, Google, Zoho, and Amazon, who are providing additional support, and they're providing mentorship and partnership to the recognized startups. Next slide, please. So to demonstrate the efforts, the integrated efforts of payment platforms, I would now also like to discuss about the smart city cards, which is a use case that we have taken up from Odisha. And we chose this one because it goes very well with the smart city campaign from the Government of India, and Bhubaneswar is one of the smart cities there. So we want to talk about it. Could we move to the next slide, please? The Government of Odisha, along with the ICICI Bank, has come up with a prepaid and preloaded card. It could be reloaded again for multiple uses. And it comes with a thought that one could go cashless within the city of Bhubaneswar. So this is an ODC card which is being used for various use cases. One could use it for transport within the city. Next slide, please. One could even use it for paying for transport and restaurant bills. It can also be used for shopping, and it can also be used for taxi bills. It is an initiative from the Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation. And could we move to the next slide, please? And with the ODC City Card, the government is trying to initiate the public-private partnership also, and it is also promoting this fact that one could use one card for various use cases, and not giving up the burden on the citizens to use multiple cards and reloading them from multiple devices, multiple POS machines, and make it really convenient. And this is something that most of us would have seen in advanced cities and countries like Singapore or Hong Kong, but we are able to see it here also. So in terms of key takeaways, state government's leadership, we understand, is really critical. One has to create incentives for responsible fintech and ensure that there are innovations which are promoted and encouraged to respond to the challenges of last mile delivery. For example, in Odisha, iServU, which is one of the leading fintechs and has recently been taken over by a Bengaluru firm, has shown that how reducing infrastructure costs by approximately 80% of the usual cost is promoting synergies across operations. And state government's leadership is key in sectors such as transportation, which is providing additional cash-based incentives, and is providing options for fintech partnerships. And this is something which can be used by all segments of society and could be extremely, extremely beneficial for reducing cost of service delivery to citizens. I'll stop there, Kezom, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prerna, for presenting Odisha's lessons for everyone. With this, we have formally concluded all the official sessions, the various lessons that we were able to bring together under the leadership of the DEA team. May I, at this point, open up the floor to ask if anyone has questions. I see that there are a number of messages that have come in to us over email, but please do feel comfortable enough to ask your questions here in this open forum as well. It's a confidential discussion and there's no wrong question. Miss Abdullah ji, would you have a question? If not, Miss Abdullah, Gaurav from Maharashtra, what would be some of your reflections on hearing from Odisha and Karnataka, and of course some of the initiatives that are happening by the center as well? Would you be able to share some of your reflections?
Kesum, one of the constant themes across the session today has been in various efforts across the state and center. We've seen quite a fair bit of growth, and there is a great sense of opportunity in terms of mutual learnings and then collaborating together. So whether it's collaboration between center and state, where I see a lot has been done by DFS and DEA across platforms, just gaining and absorbing the challenges and the opportunities they see in terms of state, implementing and collaborating with them, and then cross collaborations and participations among the states, whether it's the states who have been proactively putting together things or just sharing our knowledge through such forums. It was a constant theme across. So looking forward to such sessions and an opportunity to just precipitate from such sessions.
Thank you so much, Gaurav, for these reflections and also for Maharashtra's offer to team up with other states to share its infrastructure. May I also ask if Mr. Vikas Verma ji, if you have any question or reflections that you'd like to share before we conclude? I know that connection is not very strong for everyone. If not, we'll move on to someone who's raised their hands. Suniti ji.
Okay, so just couple of points. Whatever Gaurav has actually mentioned, I'll just add few points. So it was interesting to hear from Karnataka, Tamil Nadu about like the various effort on sandboxes. So I do see that there is a synergy that we can really look at, connecting across states, and of course then see how the open API effort that Abhishek Singh ji has mentioned. So it's high time for us to stitch things together as a country. So this is something, even we have taken action on us, that we'll reach out to Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and see how we can stitch this. And of course, couple of points for Abhishek ji. If I mean, just while there are unified platforms for education, farmer are underway. So in our various interaction, we did also see that if we can look at some unified platform, keeping the investor's persona in mind. So whether you call it a overall finance play or specifically investor persona, that is a unified platform for them will actually go a long way, while the country is really looking at to be a 5 trillion economy by 2025. That's a request. Would happy to discuss further. And one more request is, it was really overwhelming and interesting to hear about DE and DFS initiatives. So we'll really look forward to if we have more forums where we can connect with DE and DFS in a more integrated manner, where we can learn and also probably participate as apt.
Great. Thank you so much, Suniti, for these reflections. They're quite valuable, so thank you. May I call on Mr. Hanotaka from Arunachal Pradesh? Sir, are you on the line? If you can hear us, would you like to share some reflections from the Northeast region? If not, I see Mr. Vikas Verma, you've come online.
Yes, ma'am. No, I have been online actually for the last wonderful 2.5 hours. I've heard every bit of it. And I must congratulate first you and all the states and participants for sharing such gems of knowledge. I think it is absolutely wonderful to be able to spend such time and hear amazing work which has been happening. And we actually, I represent the UNDP North region, which includes Haryana, Punjab, Chandigarh, Himachal Pradesh, and soon to be Jammu Kashmir, etc. But what I wanted to share was that quite a few of these challenges and works we have been working in UNDP with the governments, and a lot of fintech ideas we have been trying to also think through in the COVID times. But listening to all that, we just discovered that we have been sitting all alone and thinking about it. But this has presented such a beautiful platform in which we have heard so much of work happening in the other states, and we would love to be in touch with our really colleagues and advisors from Government of India who are guiding this particular path for India and not just all the states, and really look forward to knowing more about all these projects and how we can adapt it in our states. Because although there are a lot of initiatives in digitization and digital reforms, etc., which has happened, and courtesy COVID, it has been pretty widespread. But all of them coming together is something which we have really heard. And I congratulate you especially for putting this all together and helping us to know all these great things happening there.
Well, I think a big round of applause for the Department of Economic Affairs team, really, absolutely, which includes, of course, Mr. Rajaramanji, but also colleagues on the line. So to them. But thank you for these remarks. May I also request Mr. Nageshwar Rao from Telangana? I know that Mr. Jayesh Rajan, Principal Secretary IT, couldn't join, but if you would like to also share some reflections, Telangana has also been such a leader. Sir, if you hear me, please do share some reflections. Great. I'm going to randomly pick one more person and then I'll hand it over to our additional secretary, Mr. Rajaramanji. What about you from the Agriculture Department in Haryana? Any reflections, sir or madam? And one last trial, Mr. Tarun Bamba. Well, if not, we have the digital recording of today's proceedings that will be shared with everyone. And may I call upon Mr. Rajaramanji to make his closing remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kizom. It was great listening to both the central government representatives as well as the state government agencies on what they have been doing all this while. So as Suniti just mentioned, I think probably there is a case for greater coordination, coherence, and probably integration of a lot of efforts. In fact, when Mr. Abhishek spoke, I think the efforts that they have taken in terms of setting up the digital locker and the open API exchange, all that sounds, I think it's a very good experiment. In fact, when I could see that the Maharashtra Fintech Hub was also set up an open API exchange, I would feel that maybe I think there is a case for a national open API exchange where a lot of these can be integrated and sorted out by, say, sectors, by geography. I think each of them come with several parameters in terms of slices and dices. So if there is a greater amount of due diligence done on these APIs, classification done properly, verification and authentication done properly. I think probably its ability to be used by users who require some kind of validation to be would be of a higher order. And it is something like the Google Play Store. I mean, I think Google does the job of authenticating every one of those applications that come on this platform. So a similar way, I guess, probably the MyGov and could work with Fintech hub in Maharashtra, with Karnataka, and with many other states which are in the business of of putting up new APIs through in the form as and when greater innovations happen, and enable its wider usage and acceptability by especially by the financial sector, because because today's discussion is largely on digital payments. The financial sector looks at credibility, its security, and reliability as several of the indicators which go into probably selecting that API for sourcing data for decision making. So therefore, I would say that maybe there is a case there, and I will also, I think maybe take it up with MeitY and Mr. Abhishek Singh on ensuring that this there are some national standards which are used to actually to ensure that APIs are rated before they are and made available to users. Similarly, I think while that be on the supply side, on the demand side, the supply side issues like, say, for instance, enabling institutions to open up databases is very important. I think there, while the Government of India through the MeitY and the MyGov will be able to announce policies, I think like the NDSAP and others, it is for the state governments and local governments. Today we see local government database is also very important. So I think these two levels of government, we see active governments like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, etc. But I think more governments and especially even these active governments should actually look at how to unlock the value, the business value in all these databases. So using the open, especially for the fintech sector. I am looking at the the financial sector, digital payments. We saw the case where of what Sanjeev Kaushik presented. If data is made available to fintech players in the form of, say, the regularity in paying the electricity bills, regularity in settling their property taxes. So these are all, very valuable financial sector data which can be used by a bank, by a cooperative institution, by a fintech player to actually to lend with a greater degree of confidence and a lower risk. And probably as a result of this, probably the risk rating of the individual can correctly assessed, and maybe they can offer lower interest rates. So at the end of the day, it can actually translate into lower costs to the ultimate borrower because of the availability of information on a consent basis, obviously. So therefore, I would strongly request Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, and many other of these advanced states to start working, and even all the other states as well, including Odisha and other states, to start working with their utilities. I think where all this financial sector related data is available, and try and unlock them and make them available as APIs. I think so. If we can draw up a kind of I would request Kizom and her team to actually to probably list, work with Sanjeev Kaushik and try and figure out which are those pieces of data which are lying in the central government, which are those pieces of data which are lying in the state government, which is of interest to the financial sector, which can be picked up and made available in a very organized fashion through APIs to all these players. So if that service can be done, I think we would have, we will be probably injecting a lot of efficiency into the sector by lowering the risks, lowering the costs, and so on and so forth, and maybe probably reducing the time taken for processing of applications. Because essentially, when we have all this data on the tap of an API in a very reliable fashion, in a very secure fashion, I'm sure that the time taken to process applications would actually go down very sharply, I think, because if amongst, say, 10 pieces of data, we are able to make 4 pieces of data available through open APIs. I think I'm sure that the speed and the confidence which decision making can happen in the financial sector can be improved very significantly. So I think maybe there is a strong case for this, and let us work together with the DFS, MeitY, and other and the state governments to actually, if there can be some kind of a wish list in the form of some document where these pieces of data and the data custodians defined very clearly, we can probably write to the chief secretaries of the states and to the IT secretaries to have them unlocked, and then maybe MyGov can play the role of the host of all these APIs, so that maybe we have a single point of contact for the financial sector play. So I would say that this is very exciting, and I am sure that this will represent a big step forward for the financial sector. And of course, the other areas are there. I think I would end here with some closing remarks. I see Sanjeev and Abhishek also there. Maybe we can also seek their views also before we close.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajaraman, for championing this great responsibility to the end users and highlighting some practical steps that can be taken. Sanjeev ji, if you are there, would you like to share some reflections, please?
No, just a very quick one to say that as Sir has pointed out, we need to work together very closely, Kizom. I think the work you're doing is very exciting. I wanted also to flag that the international best practice that you and I were discussing the other day would be also very useful to us in India, of course, and we can also disseminate information about the great work we are doing to other countries and work on areas like internationalizing our RuPay card, etc. So as Sir said, let us be in touch and see how we can take things forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev ji, for your commitment to this. And may I also request Abhishek ji, if you are there, to share some reflections, please.
Yeah, in fact, Kezom, thanks a lot. In fact, very insightful discussions, and what Sir Rajaraman ji just mentioned sums up it very beautifully. The potential for APIs and the potential for integrating services is immense. We need to move up from service delivery in silos to integrated one whole of government approach. And MeitY is supporting various government departments for enabling this. We have the standards and the norms for that. The policies have been laid down. And our team, whether it's the Umang team or the DigiLocker team, also works with various government departments to help them write the APIs. So very often what we feel is that the desire of departments is there to integrate services, but very often every department does not have the skill set to have a team which can write those APIs or the wherewithal to write an RFP to engage a team which will do that. So what we do is that we sit with various departments, work out their requirements, and ensure that the technical teams of any GD and any national governance division helps him handhold the concerned departments writing those APIs. If there are any state governments or any government affairs departments who want to avail of these services, we are very much readily available at almost no cost. So that's what I would like to just mention, and hope that the dialogue that you have initiated today and the work that the Ministry of Finance and Financial Services is leading will ultimately result in citizens having better access to all services in an integrated manner.
Thank you so much, Abhishek ji. And since we have 5 more minutes, we see a raised hand from Kriti ji. Maybe request you to also share your reflections from the state as before we close. Thank you.
I actually had a question for the representatives of Maharashtra and Karnataka. They mentioned using the regulatory sandbox, and I was just wondering if they managed, if they tested out any financial product or technology in this regulatory sandbox, which managed to successfully be pushed into the real world. I know it could be a very premature question right now because this is a very new thing, a regulatory sandbox, but I was just wondering if there were any successful stories.
Kriti ji, may I also request you to state the state you are from?
I'm from Madhya Pradesh. I'm here with the State Office of UNDP.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Suniti, would you like to take this question?
Sure. So Kriti, just clarification on that point. I know Karnataka has mentioned about regulatory sandbox. Regulatory sandbox are actually the sandboxes created by our financial regulators. So fortunately, all our regulators, including RBI, IRDA, SEBI, PFRDA, all of them actually had opened their regulatory sandboxes primarily to experiment specific use cases, which is more related to them. So banking regulatory experimentation is being done by RBI. Similarly, the insurance driven are done by them. So whenever you mention about regulatory sandbox, these are more driven by the regulators, but entities like us and other states can actually support them in managing the sandboxes. So for example, we're working with RBI to connect them to the right kind of fintech startups whose innovation can actually apply to that sandbox and then take it forward kind of. So it's more of a collaborative approach, but state government running a regulatory sandbox is kind of, it's more from a definition wise, it's not the same. So the sandboxes are out there, but it's just that the ownership is different. And the sandboxes that we host are more open API sandboxes, which are more like marketplace where financial institutes, fintechs, and government data set can coexist and cross collaboration for experimentation can happen. So these two have to have their own boundaries, primarily from a data sensitivity standpoint and experimentation standpoint.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Suniti. And I think this may be an opportunity to follow up on Maharashtra's offer with Madhya Pradesh.
Sure.
So thank you. And with this, we are officially closing today's proceedings. You will receive the link to the presentation and the recording of today's proceedings so that others may also benefit from the session. Thank you so much, Mr. Rajaramanji, for your leadership and your team, as well as, of course, all the senior officials and esteemed guests from across the different states in the great country of India. Have a great evening and namaskar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kizam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.